As we knew, the heroes planned to confront All For One, Shigaraki, and their army relied on the principle of divide and conquer due to numbers, and the clear power gap between them. It was like pulling a car with a very thin thread. But as the winds blew against the ship's desires, matters escalated quickly as seen before. Twice's clones swept the area with Dabi's fire and Toga's madness. Meanwhile, Midoriya and Shigaraki were in a bloody fight. To make matters worse, All For One was on his way to seize Shigaraki's body and complete himself. Despair took control of the hero's operation room. Since no hero could face or stop All For One, the symbol of hope All Might appeared. He informed them he would confront All For One. The operations leader and his friend Tsukauchi refused that proposal initially because he had no powers, but he agreed as a drowning man clutches at a straw. They had no other choice. All Might exploited Shigaraki's merged consciousness to lure him into a fight. The goal was wasting time and keeping him away from Shigaraki. He put on his Iron Man-like suit. He challenged him to a fight. Seeing All Might, All For One became like a bull seeing red and attacked, without hesitation, as he was the stubborn rival who ruined his plans more than any other hero. He was the one he loved manipulating the most. Although he knew All Might was stalling for time, he could not resist the urge to eliminate All Might. His mere existence provoked him to start fighting. He fired lasers that destroyed the entire street. However, All Might emerged unscathed thanks to the shield of his mechanical suit. All For One pounced on him angrily, stating that reckless fighting style worked before because of One For All. But now the situation was totally different. He then fired a devastating laser beam towards All Might. However, All Might transformed his armor into a shield-like sphere to block the beam. All Might emerged from the explosion, shocking everyone in the command center who expected him to die. The suit reported 66% shield depletion. It could not block another attack like that. He smiled and said there was no problem. Meanwhile, All For One noticed All Might fighting recklessly. He did not dodge attacks as usual. He flew towards him quickly, claiming to be the source of his power, to fight in that manner. Suddenly, black whips surrounded him from all sides, binding him in place. Without delay, electric bolts flowed through the whips and electrocuted him. At that moment, All For One realized All Might used the electricity to disable his regeneration. Before All For One could react, All Might launched himself towards him. He told him that since his fight with his teacher Nana, he started every battle with long-range attacks to weaken opponents. That strategy only worked on those who had powers to steal. Upon finishing his sentence, part of his armor detached and formed a large foot. He kicked All For One with full force. All Might said he wanted one last chance to fight him, which is why he commissioned that custom suit. He recalled his previous defeat against All For One and America. He then used the gift she granted him to eliminate him once and for all. He spoke to Tsukauchi, saying they had known each other for years and he knew best. He never entered a fight thinking of defeat. He then delivered a super kick to All For One's face. Just like Midoriya, he beat All For One, saying he felt guilty because an old man who was 55 years old was beating a small child. All Might only thought about All For One and pray. His intense hatred and desire to steal One For All was the weakness All Might used to win that fight. He mocked All For One, asking what kind of demon king let an old man without powers wipe the floor with him. All Might's goal was provocation, to keep him fighting for as long as possible. Amidst the barrage of blows raining on All For One's face, he gathered many abilities and merged them. With one strike, he destroyed everything and sent All Might flying. All Might rose from the rubble after using a shield mimicking Tokoyami's power. He realized his provocations worked. He ignored the suit's damage report and activated the mobility assist at maximum power. All For One arrived and asked All Might what he was thinking facing him head-on. Before All Might replied, All For One continued, calling him a worthless insect. He said his will drove him there, and his delusions made him think he could face him. Once he destroyed that scrap metal, he would be dead. Unlike quirks, support items never surpass their limits. All Might recalled his words to Midoriya. He told All For One they thought alike. A flashback showed All Might when he was still, a scrawny kid following Nana and asking her to train him. She refused because he did not have any powers. She told him to use a weapon for protection and to just live his life and die in peace. When she learned his family was killed, she said she was the same and had no time to fulfill his wishes. He told her that in that world, criminals were rewarded while victims drowned in grief and anger, leading to tragedy. He could not bear it anymore. When she asked what he wanted, he said he wanted to make the world a place where everyone smiled. To do that, he needed a symbol. Nana asked what kind of symbol. He replied, the world needed a symbol of peace. Looking at the ruins, he explained that people would rebuild houses and things would return to normal. Residents would return home, but they would not be the same and would live in fear. Nana asked him if that was the reason he sought power. He replied that everyone was busy protecting their loved ones. Therefore, he had to take on that task since he was quirkless. He then attacked All For One ferociously. However, All For One was unaffected and said he was not deceived by his petty plan. His victory was guaranteed as he only needed time to destroy him. He fired a massive energy wave. It hit All Might directly. While All Might withstood the attack, a missile launched from his vehicle towards them. It flew at high speed, disassembling until it was the size of a needle. All Might stabbed the missile into All for One's stomach, releasing a potent acid inside his body. He mocked him, saying the acid would corrode him despite his regeneration. We saw the destruction caused by their ongoing battle. The command center noticed that All for One was getting closer to UA High, but he continued chasing All Might. Meanwhile, All Might was on a rooftop. All for One's last attack injured his entire body and cracked his ribs, causing respiratory failure. It seemed like the end. He reached a state where he recalled meeting Midoriya. He told him he had many dreams at his age, but as All Might, that was his only path. He stood up despite his injuries. When All for One arrived, he noticed All for One had grown younger. He hoped he would not notice his injuries, and that he was barely standing. Realizing All for One had to injure himself to purge the acid, he laughed madly. His memories with Midoriya flashed by. He summoned the remaining support items, which merged with his armor as he prepared for his final stand. All Might moved rapidly between buildings using the new parts, inspired by Class A's quirks. Realizing All for One de-aged faster the more damage he took, he decided to use a specific ability. However, he could not use it with his current gear due to low energy. He relied on the animal communication ability to activate it. While All Might was lost in thought, All for One appeared. He said he never imagined he would run away after that laugh. That crazy laugh implying he would destroy him. He knew his plan and vowed to wipe that smile off his face. He would finish him with minimal effort. He then formed blades that attacked All Might from all directions. However, All Might managed to escape despite his injuries, but he discovered it was a trap, and he fell right into it as All for One awaited his appearance. With great difficulty, All Might escaped. All for One continued chasing him, asking mockingly what happened. Where was his smile? Or was he now just a coward? Did he think using those children's quirks would protect him? As All for One continued attacking All Might, he recalled that the fight was being broadcast to the whole world. He asked him mockingly if he was satisfied as the symbol of peace being humiliated, like that in front of everyone. He then broke through a wall, appeared before All Might, and landed a powerful blow. He told him his light had gone out. However, All Might resisted despite his injury. He replied that he still did not understand that humans were literally flickers. Even if a light went out, someone else would surely continue the mission and light up the darkness plaguing humanity. We left them and went to Aoyama, who was with the group of heroes assigned to defeat the remaining villains who were not teleported. Unfortunately, all 32 heroes were defeated except one. We saw an injured Aoyama with plants sprouting from different parts of his body. Facing him was one of the most dangerous assassins who escaped Tartarus, Kuneda. He explained his plants did not need light because they fed on human flesh to grow. Beside Aoyama, we found the hero Fat Gum, who informed Aoyama the plants were growing very fast inside his body. They would cancel his quirk sooner or later. Therefore, he could do nothing but rely on Aoyama. At the end of his speech, a large plant emerged from his back. Then, a huge number of plants spread across the area. Kuneda said proudly it was the first time he saw a plant that huge. He controlled those plants like parts of his body. He took out the belt Aoyama used, telling him there was no escape for a traitor like him because his quirk was useless without the belt controlling it. On the other hand, his power increased with his plant spreading. Since controlling him was like a puppet due to his useless quirk, the best description for his life was pathetic. Aoyama remembered his parents' joy when he first used his quirk. He thanked Kuneda because calling him a traitor made him remember his mistake and increased his determination to cling to the light. He wanted his light to shine brighter than ever before. He then used his quirk to fire a multi-directional laser beam. However, the beam did not touch Kuneda or his plants. Kuneda said, mockingly, he could not grasp that he would die. At that moment, Hagakure appeared, reflecting and amplifying all the laser beams, hitting Kuneda and wiping him and his plants out. Meanwhile, All Might told All for One that whoever took over the mission after him would light the way. It would allow him to ignite his light again. He assured him he was not ready to lose that battle. He then fired a devastating laser beam towards All for One. He asked him to remember the name of the quirk that would finish him. Can't Stop Twinkling. All Might continued blasting All for One with lasers despite his critical condition and the shield nearing destruction. He said Star's final battle inspired him. Since he could not solidify lasers like her, he found a suitable solution. He attacked All for One, who tried to escape the laser with destructive sound waves. All Might only thought about not letting him escape. He added he sacrificed the thrusters used for mobility to fire the laser. He managed to escape the last attack, thanks to the heat reflection quirk. However, as a result, his legs were completely destroyed. Luckily, All for One avoided hitting his head to enjoy torturing him as long as possible, but he was still alive due to that decision. At that moment, a massive explosion occurred within the laser. Lightning bolts shot out from everywhere. One bolt hit All Might in the face. He used the creation quirk and grape juice quirk to throw a number of bombs at All for One and pin him down. He prayed he would not resist any longer because he literally did everything he could. Also, once the adrenaline wore off, he would not be able to move from the pain. In a corner of the world, we saw a random child watching the battle broadcast with his grandmother. He asked who the skinny man was. She said she did not know and was not into hero stuff. When he asked what would happen if he won or lost, she replied the fight was in a faraway country and would not affect them regardless of the result. The child watched the battle intently, wishing for All Might's victory. Back on the battlefield, we saw despair on All Might's face after All For One destroyed the laser device. All For One emerged from the dust, his body glowing. He reminded All Might that tools would never be more than tools. He told him mockingly that his state made him pity him because he was supposed to smile. But since he lost his symbolism, he would let despair swallow him and make him crawl before him like insects. In the end, he would cut him into pieces like he did before. He said the situation changed once All For One lost control of his body, which froze suddenly. All Might seized the opportunity and attacked him ferociously while smiling. From the rubble, they heard a voice saying all humans bled the same red blood. In less than a second, Stain appeared and froze All For One in place using his quirk after tasting his blood. A cool entrance that caused chaos, literally turning the world 180 degrees. He told All Might to finish him. We returned to Aoyama, who looked at Hagakure, unable to speak from pain. Noticing her body was not transparent and she could not turn invisible, she asked him to look away and ran to hide. She asked herself why her quirk failed now. After some thought, she recalled the same thing happened when she exerted effort beyond her limits. She looked at Aoyama and asked if his quirk became stronger. However, Aoyama did not answer her question. He said they should burn those plants because they would continue growing, regardless of Kuneda's state. He asked Hagakure to reflect the light to help him burn all the plants. When she asked what would happen if he overused his quirk without the belt, he replied it was his last day as a student at the Hero Academy, and he was ready to do anything. We saw All Might recalling memories as a small child when his mother read him a story of a hero who traveled the world feeding the needy. Since then, he admired heroes and dreamed of being like that hero, helping people. But realizing his journey was nearing its end, he looked back. He discovered the impact he left on people would not be erased easily, which was the most important thing to him. All Might snapped out of his memories with Stain's arrival to the battlefield to help him. To understand what brought Stain there, we went back a bit. When All Might spoke to Todoroki and Ida, asking them to stop Dabi at that moment, Stain was watching them. Through their conversation, he understood the situation and tracked the battle between All For One and All Might. He started examining the blood spots present to determine whose they were. After searching and analyzing, he finally found All For One's blood. At that point, All For One was about to destroy the laser cannon. Stain flew immediately to the battlefield, saying no matter how mighty All For One was, once he tasted his blood, his quirk would activate and freeze him in place. We returned to the present and saw Stain and All Might attacking All For One simultaneously to finish him. Stain revealed himself because he considered All Might a symbol of heroism that must not lose for any reason. However, they were surprised that All For One expelled all the blood from his body to neutralize Stain's quirk. All For One realized Stain was the only one who disobeyed his orders and escaped from Tartarus prison. Therefore, he was well prepared to face his quirk and overcome it. Stain replied that whether he prepared or not, it would not change anything. However, All For One grabbed him and crushed his body forcefully. He informed him he changed his blood composition completely, so his quirk had no effect on him. Since he recovered after expelling all the blood, it was time to finish him. He spun and threw him forcefully into several buildings until he fell, unable to move. He flew towards him before All Might could reach them. He said he would steal his quirk and thanked him for helping develop the League of Villains, especially Shigaraki. But since he was useless, his story ended. Stain replied that his role was not over, and even his death would have a purpose. He looked at All Might, saying that although he was not educated well, he learned the meaning of a true hero from him. He hoped All Might would emerge victorious from that battle. At that moment, All For One destroyed him in front of All Might, who was consumed by rage and rushed towards All For One. But All For One did not give him a chance and attacked him quickly with energy from his hand. All Might took a defensive stance, but was surprised by the suit's last shield protecting him. All Might fell to the ground after exhausting all his weapons and losing the ability to move his legs. In his moments of surrender, Nana appeared before him, asking him not to give up and to do his best. Then he saw Night Eye, telling him he did everything and could not continue. He then remembered Midoriya and asked him to live until he achieved his dream and became a hero like him, proving his existence to the world. Hope returned to him, and he crawled with great difficulty, bleeding from everywhere. He looked at All For One with his usual smile, telling him to come and face him, but All For One's eyes were entirely focused on his main goal, the location of Midoriya and Shigaraki's fight. With the fading of Twice's clones, the heroes present in the flying coffin managed to catch their breath. Thus, they could stop the coffin's descent and fly again. But life was not that easy because the command center detected All For One flying towards them like a rocket. Tsukauchi said that Midoriya succeeded in evading Shigaraki's attacks in their close quarters fight, somehow. However, All For One's arrival at the battlefield would change everything. It would also allow him to pull Shigaraki towards him and destroy everything they did. At that moment, All For One smiled at his victory. His goal, finally before his eyes, seconds away from fulfilling his desire, eternal desire. He said that by merging with Shigaraki, thanks to the rewind ability, he could transfer all his powers and make him an improved version to prevent Midoriya from interfering in. That merger, that was the best place to start. He used the warp quirk to pull Shigaraki to him, but Shigaraki resisted and refused to teleport to him, asking All For One not to interfere in his fight. All For One said Shigaraki's consciousness overcame him and was dominant since. He expected that, so there was no problem. Since he did not want to come, he would go to him himself. All Might called him again. He asked him to come down and face him. Shortly after, a reporter was shocked and pointed to his friend, asking if he saw that. As soon as his friend turned, he found All For One flying while carrying All Might, who was wrecked and looked like he was dying. All For One told him the time had come to pay the price for the false hope he planted in people. On the other side, Shigaraki and Midoriya continued the tug-of-war battle between them. Shigaraki told Midoriya he better go help All Might before he died, especially since he would not find a better time. He freed his hand from Midoriya's whip, so Midoriya grabbed his hand and bound him. Shigaraki continued that while Midoriya saved All Might, he would go finish off all the insects that attacked him. At that moment, Midoriya glimpsed a light approaching. He looked at it and froze when he saw All Might's condition. A flood of memories with All Might flashed before his eyes literally. He tried to hold back tears despite the shock because he promised All Might he would not cry, ever, and would not be like little kids. But the flood of memories did not stop and broke down all the barriers that Midoriya built to stop it. He remembered All Might's support and encouragement that he could achieve his dream, even without any powers. At the same time, All Might, in his final moments, said that just as Midoriya exerted every effort to achieve his dream, he would never give up his dream of being the symbol of peace. As if life returned to him anew, he grabbed All For One with full force. At the same time, All For One was surprised by Nana's final moments appearing before him. He asked himself in surprise why he saw those memories, especially since she chased idealistic dreams without having any ability to achieve them, and her death was a true disgrace. He remembered Nana telling him with her last breath that his defeat would surely be at All Might's hands because he was crazier than him. He woke from his memories to All Might's voice smiling and saying if he killed him now, would he turn back into a small child? In less than a second, he realized All Might would blow himself up and they would both die. All Might said even if he died now, he lit the path for a whole generation of heroes who would continue the journey after him. However, he was surprised by All For One's crazy laugh and spikes piercing his hand and destroying the bomb. All For One told him mockingly he thought he would let him die a heroic death. He was dreaming, my dear. With that, he played all his cards. There was nothing left for him to do. At the end of his speech, he tasted All Might's blood and froze him in place. He informed him he knew how dangerous a wounded hero was, so he would not leave him any escape. Despair appeared clearly on All Might's face, but All For One gave a Joker-like smile and said finally that was the look he was waiting for. He would now end his miserable life while he was in the worst state imaginable. Thus, the legend of the fake hero would end. With the situation deteriorating, La Brava asked Gentle to go save All Might. He told her okay. The coffin stabilized and did not need his help. But before he finished his sentence, a blow from All For One pierced the coffin and sent it into a freefall again. All For One, said the coffin, deflected his attack, but it did not matter because now Gentle would not be able to annoy him. At that moment, a group of stealth jets appeared preparing to drown All For One in a barrage of lasers. However, All For One destroyed them in an instant and said mockingly that Star was not there to help them. While Midoriya struggled to control Shigaraki, he looked at All Might. All For One lifted him easily and displayed his final moments to the world. It showed fear and anxiety on everyone watching the fight, especially the heroes, because they all knew that was the moment their symbol of hope would be extinguished and replaced by terrifying darkness. Pitch black darkness would cover everything. They all wished for only one thing, that someone would come and save All Might from death. For moments, Midoriya focused entirely on All Might with tear-filled eyes, reaching out his hand to him as if inside he knew he could not reach him. At that time, a strong explosion shook the place. Midoriya looked behind him to see Bakugo standing up again. As if the flickers left by, All Might merged together, forming a beam of light cutting through the darkness, announcing the end of an era and the start of a new era for heroes. So what would happen? We saw All For One with joy clear on his face, seconds away from destroying his eternal rival who was a thorn in his side and ruined his plans countless times. Countless times. At the same time, sadness and despair were on the faces of everyone watching the fight, seeing evil about to win that battle. They all wished for one thing, that someone would intervene and save All Might, or rather save their hope before it was erased from existence. At that moment, Bakugo rose from his slumber like a phoenix reborn from the ashes. While All for One was drunk on the ecstasy of victory, All Might remembered Night Eye's words that if he continued that way, he would be killed by a villain stronger than he imagined. A gentle breeze blew from the other side of the globe, with people's differing reactions to that gentle breeze, and everyone busy with their own lives. None of them imagined that breeze would turn into stormy winds blowing over the battlefield between good and evil. It would not only change the weather, but would change the battle's fate and overturn expectations. Although people did not know that wind's effect until the last moment, they prayed for a miracle to happen and the battle's fate to change. In response to their prayer, we saw Bakugo re-entering the battlefield. In a fraction of a second, he and Midoriya exchanged a single glance. Without any words, they understood each other completely. Bakugo launched like an arrow towards Midoriya, who used the second user's quirk to push Bakugo forward and increase his speed more and more, while Bakugo headed towards him to save All Might. Shigaraki told Midoriya his action was useless because he would not arrive in time. He said his inability to see All Might among one-for-all users was because he was still alive, but now, All Might's vestige started appearing slowly before Midoriya, proof his life was ending. Once the person who gave people hope to dream of a better future died, their dreams would shatter on the rocks of bitter reality. On the other side, All Might remembered Night Eye's last words when he said he tried to change the future where All Might would be killed, but unfortunately failed. When he saw Midoriya, he realized it was about energy, and if there was a clear vision, the future would change. It did not depend on Midoriya alone. If all people believed and wished for the same future, it would surely come true. We went to Bakugo, who on his way to All Might remembered his talk with Midoriya and his jealousy that he was the heir to All Might's quirk while he endangered All Might. Ending his thoughts, he exploded on All for One. His joy of victory turned to shock when Bakugo snatched All Might from his hand. Of course, All Might's shock was no less than All for One's, because he had surrendered after reaching his limit. Because he remained in disbelief, asking himself how he did not die, the answer came from Night Eye appearing before him. He told him that was indeed the end of his dream, but the future changed. After his dream ended at the hands of All for One, he had nothing left, except his promise to Midoriya, which he had to keep. All Might replied that a teacher should die when passing the banner to students. Night Eye said that was only in stories. Although he was a hero, he was human and would not die easily because he had a duty. Surprised, people saw Bakugo saving All Might and asked who he was. All Might checked on Bakugo, who literally returned from death. Bakugo replied he should worry about himself because he looked completely finished. At that moment, Edgeshot appeared, who was literally thinner than a thread. He told Bakugo he made him spit out the blood that was accumulated inside his body and asked if he felt better. He then fell to the ground weakly and informed him that his body was destroyed because he sacrificed it to treat him. Although his wounds would not open again easily, he was sure that in his condition, every breath he took was like knives stabbing into his chest, so he should not move. Bakugo replied he knew and thanked him for saving him. Edgeshot told him he did nothing except suture him. He tried with all his might to keep his heart and lungs working, but despite that, he did not regain consciousness. Since his skill consumed his life gradually, he was about to collapse. The moment he was forced to choose between his life and saving Bakugo, who would not respond, drops of Bakugo's sweat mixed with his blood appeared. Once they touched his heart, he returned to life. Here All Might looked at Bakugo and realized the child who promised to surpass him was close to fulfilling his promise. Bakugo's voice interrupted him, asking who the small kid was and if he was not fighting All for One. All Might explained that it was All for One. He asked him to come closer and extended his hand. When Bakugo held his hand, All Might's mechanical arm transferred to him. All Might said the arm lost most of its power, but would work as a splint at least. He apologized because that was all he could offer. Bakugo smiled happily because this gift represented his idol's acknowledgement of him and his abilities. At that time, All for One stood thinking about what to do. Should he finish All Might or go to Shigaraki? After some thought, he decided to go to Shigaraki first. He could kill All Might anytime later, but first, he had to control Shigaraki's consciousness completely and transfer his enhanced abilities to him. He said if he had succeeded in controlling Shigaraki from the start, none of this would have happened. He blamed himself because he thought he calculated everything, but some trivial insects he never dreamed would face him were the reason his plan deviated from the path he set. While All for One burned with rage due to the interference of heroes he despised and their impact on his plans, he was surprised by Bakugo appearing next to him out of nowhere. Before he could react, Bakugo punched him in the face and blew him up, saying, "I am your daddy. No. As long as All Might couldn't finish you, I must complete his mission." We left them and flew to the command center. We found Tsukauchi, once reassured about All Might's survival, asking for reports from other locations. Within seconds, they informed him that matters at the central hospital ended in their favor, and Spinner and the villains were arrested. On Okuto Island, the heroes defeated the Nomu, and the rescue team was on its way. Additionally, Matters at the operation's starting point were under control. Jaku Hospital was the same, and residents were evacuated to Shiketsu-hai. Only the National Stadium remained where fighting continued. Until that moment. Finally, Kurogiri, Eraser, and Mike's locations were still unknown. At that moment, Nagant woke from her sleep due to the explosion from Bakugo's attack on All for One. While All Might was dazzled by Bakugo's speed, Edgeshot explained that when Bakugo was at death's door, he discovered a new property of his quirk. At the same time, Bakugo felt pain sweeping through his entire body. Despite that, he continued and decided to exploit that pain to keep fighting. Shigaraki freed himself from Midoriya's restraint and said Bakugo did not die easily, just like a cockroach. But it did not matter because all he had to do was stomp on him again and again until he died by his hand. At that time, fatigue appeared on our brother Midoriya, who wondered how to deal with Shigaraki, especially since if he just touched him, he would finish him, not to mention his regeneration and enhanced body. Plus, Midoriya could only use the second user's quirk once, and once it ended, he would not be able to move due to the burden it caused his body. As they stopped talking, the four prepared to start a new chapter of the fight that would end everything. Bakugo was surprised that All for One headed straight for him instead of Shigaraki. He told himself Kugo was not strong enough and would not pose a new threat like One for All. Besides, there was no comparison between him and All Might. He would not risk using Rewind anymore in a side fight with a worthless insect. All for One finished, his words as anger gradually possessed him. On the other side, Bakugo finally understood the new feature of his quirk. He discovered it had to do with the pain he felt. By focusing on the pain resulting from the sweat drops he could stabilize the timing of side explosions and reach a higher level. Time stopped for a moment before explosions lit up the city sky. Bakugo appeared at light speed next to All for One, laughing at the speed of pain and his super speed. Since he was not used to his speed yet, he could not stop himself and crashed into buildings. Amidst the euphoria he asked himself if he could reach Midoriya's level or not. As explosions continued and Bakugo rushed relentlessly, he said for some reason he felt nothing could stop him now. In the shelter at Shiketsu-hai, we found Bakugo's mother watching the fight on screen. She asked his father, who hid his face, to watch. He replied he could not watch his son because he feared for him, especially since his opponent was All for One. She told him he must watch because she was sure her son was smiling arrogantly as usual. We left them and went to All for One. With explosions raining on him from everywhere and Bakugo's constant pursuit, he felt anger controlling him and refusing to subside, although he was convinced his opponent was just an insect posing no threat. When he looked at Bakugo's face, he went back in memories and recalled moments of the second user of One for All, specifically his provocative smile. He said he would not find resemblance to his brother, who haunted him because he killed him with his own 2 hands. Only then did he realize the reason for that burning anger, because Bakugo resembled the second user who took his brother from under his control. In his view, he was the main reason for everything happening. If not for him, his brother would be with him now. The memories ended. All for One was hit by a devastating explosion from Bakugo, throwing him to the edge of the city and smashing him into a destroyed building. With the glimmer of hope people felt, Bakugo appeared before All for One. All for One emerged from the rubble and with full malice told Bakugo, "You are the reason for all of this, Kudo." Bakugo replied, "Who is Kudo? Did your brain fry? Finally or what? My name is Bakugo, man." Anyway, All for One went back in his memories a bit. We saw 2 characters walking in the street, noticing a woman who appeared to be in her final days of pregnancy. Bone-like protrusions stuck out from her arm. They tried to check on her or help her, but she yelled at them and they left her. They left. Inside her womb, we found twins, or rather one child absorbing all the growth and the other very weak. Of course, the one taking everything was All for One. Anyway, at night, all 3 of them were drenched in blood, drowning in the river. Up to now, the story is clear, right? We went back a bit to the beginning of quirks appearing in humans, which started with a glowing baby, with increasing reports of children born with various abilities. A team of scientists decided to investigate the matter as a type of disease causing strange mutations, especially since some abilities appeared at puberty. Anyway, at the end of their research, scientists announced human genes began changing and the phenomenon of superpowers would appear increasingly in the coming period. At that time, the whole world split in 2, people with powers and those without. Because of that, chaos spread worldwide and the situation turned into gang warfare, while a group of quirkless people planned to attack quirk users. Before their power grew and attacked them, they were surprised by a small child alone in front of them. They ignored him, thinking he was just a small kid. Although they pitied his state, they had no time for him now. However, they heard a strange sound once they turned. To see what that sound was, the child made shish kebabs out of them with bone spikes protruding from his body. That scrawny kid was all for one. From the moment of his birth, he considered everything around him his property. Anyone who ignored or belittled him never ended well, including his mother, whose abilities he stole and probably killed. All for one continued spreading terror among his peers and the quirkless. As they say, literally swinging whoever he spotted. Amidst his routine of stealing quirks and killing people, his younger brother Yoichi tried to stop him from hurting people. Of course, as we saw, because All for One stole all the nutrients, his little brother was born frail and very weak. But despite that, All for One never thought of giving his brother anything. Since he considered him part of his property, he also did not want to get rid of him. Time passed. In their house, we saw Yoichi reading hero comics engrossed. Beside him, All for One asked him what he was reading behind his back. Yoichi replied he could not read difficult things, but those comics were easy and amazing because he could feel the author's emotions. He admired heroes and wished to be a hero like them too. He suggested he read them. Maybe he would like them. Indeed, All for One took the comics and read them. 3 years later, we saw Yoichi sitting reading as usual. Suddenly, the light went out and All for One appeared in the sky, his body radiating light. Yoichi was shocked by his brother's appearance and asked him why he was like that. He answered that quirk users were supposedly admired by how many? Millions of people. He told him 50 people were born with glowing abilities in India in 1 week. Therefore, he went and killed them and stole their abilities. Yoichi asked him why he did that. He replied it was written in the comics, one for all and all for one. He liked that phrase very much. I mean, the hero fought alone, hiding his identity while the rest of the people obeyed the villain out of fear, just like Yoichi was doing. He continued with a smile that froze the blood in his little brother's veins. Since that was the case, why shouldn't the whole world be subservient to him alone? That was his dream. Years and decades passed. We saw All for One grown up asking Yoichi, who was still imprisoned, to stop resisting and listen to him since he was weak and stupid. Yoichi replied that the world was now in chaos and superpowers should not be used to satisfy his selfish desires like he was doing. All for One said with feigned sympathy, poor you. All this because you were born quirkless. No one will think of you as long as you are weak. Then he grabbed his head forcefully and continued that his dream became real, and reality was not like the comics and books he read. Therefore, he would change reality. Yoichi resisted him and refused to obey him because he was dear to him. Finally, he found a superpower that weak, frail body could use easily, and he would grant it to him now. Despite Yoichi's resistance and refusal, All for One implanted the quirk in him and with it gave him his name. Anyway, the situation continued as it was despite Yoichi receiving one for all. One day, Yoichi was surprised by the door opening. 2 people appeared, took him out of his prison, and helped him escape. All for One wondered why Yoichi tried to escape from him even though he granted him power. Who were those people anyway? Then he said as long as Yoichi refused to listen to him and wanted to abandon him, he was useless to him. With a touch of his hand, he killed Yoichi, whose blood soaked him. For moments, his eyes met Kudo's eyes, who was helping Yoichi. Kudo was shocked discovering All for One's eyes were devoid of any emotions or reflection of his brother whom he killed. A while later, we found All for One puzzled because the quirk he stole and forced Yoichi to take to cover for him disappeared. He could not feel it. Since he suspected he might have stolen Yoichi's quirk in their mother's womb, he decided to verify himself and examined him. He discovered Yoichi had small remnants inside his body, which he could not even call a power because it was tiny. It resembled a small, underdeveloped child, just like Yoichi's condition. However, the strange thing was that when he touched Yoichi, he should have retrieved the power, but that did not happen. The question was if that trivial power activated. On the other side, we saw the third user, Bruce asking Kudo if he was sure All for One did not touch him then. Kudo told him to forget that talk and tell him the examination result. Bruce replied that luckily he felt something strange because inside his body were 2 powers, his birth quirk and a second dormant, underdeveloped power. At that moment, All for One said the power he granted Yoichi disappeared because his weak power absorbed it to complete itself. Kudo felt Yoichi's will inside him. He mostly felt his helplessness to stop his brother, who considered all humans merely puppets and tools to control as he pleased. That power could have been the best power if used to help people instead of only for himself. A flashback showed All for One seeing the one for all users one after another. He said he manipulated the things they loved or hated alike and made everyone do what he wanted. However, despite that, Yoichi rejected him every time he tried to control him, making him want to possess him more. All for One finished his memories stating Kudo was the cause of it all. Therefore, he wiped out his entire lineage, even the women and children suspected to be related to him. None of them survived or escaped him, so it was impossible for Bakugo standing before him to have any connection to him. He was surely just a lookalike, nothing more. But with that look in his eyes and his resistance, it was as if Kudo rose from his grave to hinder him and ruin his plan. Even if he used the warp quirk, he only had 2 destinations, next to All Might or Shigaraki. Additionally, he had to protect his body from further damage or he would rewind. mind. But the problem was Shigaraki refused merging with him. Therefore, he had no choice but to face Bakugo. He needed enough power to transfer his consciousness to Shigaraki, or so he thought initially. But now eliminating him and transferring his consciousness to Shigaraki were equally important. All for One's body swelled grotesquely as he used all the abilities he possessed. A massive energy ball appeared around him, growing with time and destroying anything it touched. He bet everything on that attack because once it finished, he would revert to a baby due to the strain. At the same time, Bakugo prepared for the confrontation, saying All for One's bet would fail. Moments passed before him when he spoke arrogantly, but did nothing. He said this time he would not hinder Midoriya's path. All for One used all his energy to launch himself like a bullet towards Bakugo. All Might screamed at Bakugo to dodge that destructive attack while Bakugo bet everything on just one explosion. Indeed, before All for One completed his launch, he was surprised by explosions occurring inside his body. He fell to the ground, in a state of shock, sure that Bakugo had not done anything yet or even attacked him. We learned that while All for One recalled the past, Bakugo fired explosive sweat droplets towards him, coated in normal sweat so the rain would not affect them since it weakened his explosions. Those droplets reached All for One, who thought they were raindrops since they did not explode. When the moment came, the time bomb that annoyed All for One exploded. Once All for One realized Bakugo outsmarted him and only needed one moment to turn the tables on him, anger controlled him more and more. He said it was his story and he would not allow a side character to stop him. At that moment, Bakugo gathered his energy and prepared to launch his strongest attacks. He told All for One people always called him smart. All he needed was one ability to wipe the floor with him. Ending his sentence, he launched like a rocket and exploded on All for One, who was a huge lump of meat. A series of explosions erupted, grilling All for One. Despite that, he resisted stubbornly. Bakugo repeated his attack, enduring the pain and his bleeding wounds. He told All for One to shut up because he gave them a headache. With the ignition of every part of All for One's body, he felt unable to control his abilities. He asked himself if that was why his body weakened. Amidst his questions and confusion, Hawks appeared to him with the rest of the stolen quirk owners. They informed him his state was due to emotions taking control, negative emotions over him. Thus, Shigaraki was the one who took over. At the same moment, Bakugo reached the remaining part of All for One's body as moments of his life flashed before him. He said that was not All for One's story, but his own story and the dreams of everyone who helped him reach that moment. With a final devastating explosion, he turned All for One's body into ash. He ended his speech, saying he would never have surpassed him alone. Then All for One, lying on the ground, said all he had to do was get away from there and reach Shigaraki and transfer his powers to him. Then he would strengthen his vestige that Shigaraki controlled and regain control of Shigaraki's body again. Based on his knowledge of Shigaraki, his vestige was defeated before using all his power. If he could control Shigaraki, he would have the chance to turn the tables, win, and seize one for all along with Yoichi. With the flood of memories passing before him, he said bad moments were the ones that remained in memory, which was why he ruined people's future. All he wanted was to be the center of people's attention, nothing more. At that moment, All for One appeared crawling on the ground after becoming a baby. Bakugo descended and stood before him, surprised he was still alive, but he coughed blood and felt cold. Just standing up consumed all his energy. For a moment, his consciousness faded. He said All for One in that state posed no danger and he could ignore him. He surrendered to his body that wanted to rest by any means, but he caught himself before falling. He said his victory would not be achieved until All for One disappeared from existence. Then All for One opened his mouth and fired a bone spear, hitting Bakugo in the face, or so he thought, because Bakugo caught the spear with his teeth, destroyed it, and told him, "Time to sleep, All for One, you baby. Come on, go to sleep." With the failure of his last attempt, despair took over All for One, who was in denial. His psychological state was not much better than his physical state, which was completely destroyed. With his loss of control over the stolen abilities, his powers faded, and with them, All for One also faded away. Only at that moment could Bakugo rest after ensuring he won. He tried to take a victory pose like All Might, but his body could not. He fell to the ground, raised his hand, and said he did his part. And it remained for Midoriya to finish his role successfully too. At the beginning of today's episode, we went back in time, a bit to when the team responsible for stopping Shigaraki was preparing the final touches of their plan. They confirmed they must control Shigaraki while he was in the coffin before he reached the ground. If he reached the ground, he would destroy everything, and their plan would go with the wind. Now their fears were limited to the damage that would happen to the building, so they prepared themselves for great losses. But the real fear was from Shigaraki's personality. Without All for One's control, he would destroy everything in his path like a madman, because he enjoyed destruction due to the hatred and malice inside him. Their biggest fear was that he would direct his anger towards planet Earth itself and destroy it. Then, even if they somehow won the battle, they would have lost the war. In the present, we saw people sitting in the Shiketsu Academy shelter watching the battle live. Sadness overshadowed everyone as they saw the extent of the destruction caused by Shigaraki, especially an old man grieving for his house, which had existed since his grandfather's days. At that time, Shigaraki was directing his power at the ground itself, so the city was destroyed and ocean waves invaded the place, sweeping away everything in their path. He said with Japan's current area, he could sink the entire country in a week at most. This meant wiping out everything without a trace or a glimmer of hope for survivors to continue their lives again. Midoriya attacked him during his speech, injuring him thanks to his quirk, which he used simultaneously. All that went through Midoriya's mind was finding a way to stop Shigaraki quickly. At that moment, Shigaraki sensed All for One's death and said all this happened because he did not finish off Bakugo. Despite everything, he was grateful for those circumstances as he became stronger and got used to Midoriya's speed. He ended his speech with a swift attack on Midoriya, who was surprised by Shigaraki's hand before his eyes. With a reflexive movement and thanks to the danger sense skill, he hit Shigaraki's hand and cut off his fingers. But he regenerated them and told Midoriya, "You are very fast to the point you can block my attack, but how long will you keep this up, my friend?" Suddenly, the user of the smoke quirk informed Midoriya that a problem occurred. We went back in time exactly 20 seconds. We saw Yoichi informing the other One for All heirs that All for One died and their eternal enemy finally ended. However, their battle was not over yet, because their current goal was defeating Shigaraki, who was about to become All for One again. The user of the smoke quirk asked, "What should we do? Every time we attack, he regenerates as if we are repeating time." At that moment, the user of Danger Sense felt them and pushed them all away to save them from Shigaraki's hand, which erased anyone in its path. The others stood frozen in surprise because this was the first time one of the heirs had their quirk stolen. In the present, the user of the smoke user informed Midoriya that he lost Danger Sense. Shigaraki examined the new ability he obtained, saying that was the power that drove All for One crazy for generations. Although he did not like the idea, it did not matter as long as it let him wipe the floor with Midoriya. Chaos spread among the vestiges, especially since they were at their limit, trying to find a way to defeat Shigaraki. Midoriya attacked Shigaraki with Black Whip, trying to bind him, but Shigaraki dodged his attacks easily thanks to Danger Sense. He smiled and said, "Aha, so that is why. You managed to hold out against me all this time." Once Midoriya realized his weapon turned against him, Shigaraki attacked ferociously, saying he had to get rid of him because he was the biggest threat. Midoriya used Black Whip to protect himself from the blow, which made him bounce on the water like a ball. Shigaraki asked mockingly why he treated him like a human, or if he thought he did not notice his tears. With increasing the intensity of his attack, he told Midoriya to get rid of those illusions because he was now completely different from the person in his imagination. After that destructive attack, Midoriya emerged from his shell covered in wounds and bleeding. He only snapped out of it when his mask crumbled in his hand. He discovered he was at Mount Fuji. The third user realized he only lost one quirk, Danger Sense. That, luckily, did not affect his physical abilities. He assured him his power came from One for All, not the individual vestiges' quirks. Therefore, all he had to do was wait until he regained his strength, especially since Gear Shift was about to run out. At that moment, the smoke user said the best solution now was for Midoriya to run since he was tired and weak. His survival from Shigaraki's stealing attack was due to Danger Sense. Since it was stolen, if Shigaraki touched Midoriya again, it was highly probable he would steal another quirk or all of them. Shigaraki's voice interrupted them, saying, "I see you ghosts. You are discussing how to escape, right?" As soon as he arrived, he used decay on the ground, which disintegrated and melted with every step he took towards Midoriya. He added that One for All heirs fled before and became stronger, so he would ensure he finished them off completely this time. He would destroy any place they thought of escaping to, erasing them from history. That was the future awaiting them. Midoriya realized Shigaraki intended to lure him there, when the vestiges told him if the mountain was destroyed, the volcano inside would erupt. True, All for One was considered absolute evil, but he did all that for the goal of world domination. Meanwhile, Shigaraki did it solely for destruction. In a sense, he was the embodiment of destruction and chaos, with each other. While the vestiges faced the shocking reality before them, Midoriya still thought there was a link between Shigaraki's actions and the memories he saw. He was still convinced that somewhere inside that mass of destruction and ruin, a human existed. Despite Shigaraki's atrocities, Midoriya told him he was still just a human in his eyes. In the last few seconds, Midoriya used Black Whip to compress his muscles to the limit. Using Fajin, he launched a wind tornado blasting everything in its path, blowing Shigaraki away. Shigaraki looked at the impact of Midoriya's blow. He realized Midoriya destroying the ground. He used decay on stop the decay from spreading to surrounding areas. Although it was a smart solution, it was temporary because he surely could not run with his body in that worn out state. He stopped talking when surprised by a smoke cloud covering the area. Before he could do anything, Black Whips attacked him from all directions. He dodged them all. Just then, Midoriya appeared, landing a powerful blow that blew off his arm and disappeared into the smoke again. It was a simple plan, but effective. He used used smokescreen to block vision and triggered danger sense with black whip attacks. Continuously. Once the chance appeared, he would pounce. This plan formed after he realized the weakness of relying on danger, sense from his fight with Nagant. But Midoriya's plan had a minor flaw. Shigaraki possessed the search quirk, meaning he could locate Midoriya in the smoke without seeing him. Midoriya learned this the hard way when Shigaraki's blades wounded him. Shigaraki's voice rang in his ear. "You think I don't know your location or weakness? You fool." Since misfortunes come in succession, at that moment gear shift wore off, and Midoriya could not move. Of course, Shigaraki did not miss. A thing like that. He told Midoriya he knew he was in his weakest state. Although his last blows were excellent, he could not repeat such a strong attack. In that condition, he told Midoriya the burden of what he protected must be heavy on him. Midoriya replied that none of that would make him forget the crying child asking for help. He attacked Shigaraki, who dodged easily, and explained that humans tried to find explanations for things they did not understand to make their lives easier. It was the same situation he said he wanted, to help him, while he rejected his limited worldview. He then told him, "As I see ghosts, then you see what is inside me using one for all. That is how you knew my location amidst the smoke. Focus well, and you will know the crying child surpassed everything and became what you see before you. Nothing can stop me now." At that moment, Nana recalled Midoriya's words when he said he wanted to save Shigaraki. After some hesitation, she made up her mind and asked him to forget that matter and focus on Shigaraki because some people only understood destruction. Midoriya rejected her proposal, asking why he then clung to the painful past and locked it inside him. He explained to her that Shigaraki apparently did not see the people he could not protect and tried to ignore the people he hurt. All he was doing was just a screen to cover his weakness. He would not give up and would continue attacking him until he destroyed that screen and revealed his true self. Then Kudo said that was why he opposed Midoriya's crazy attempt to save his eternal enemy. He was convinced that idea was from a naive child's imagination, a result of the peace he lived in. However, after observing Midoriya's actions for a while, he knew he was completely convinced all people deserved a second chance because in the end, they were humans. Finishing his speech, he asked Midoriya to execute his words exactly because he would bet everything on him. To win, he must give up one for all. Of course, his words shocked everyone, especially the Vestiges, who asked him in amazement, "What are you saying?" On the other side of the battle, All Might dreamed of Star pointing to a crack in the ground, telling him a child was crying there. But he woke from the dream to Edgeshot's voice telling him to stay awake, because if he closed his eyes, he might not open them again. He informed him communications were cut off completely now, but he was sure Midoriya was still fighting Shigaraki. All Might crawled, thinking about the dream he saw. He remembered feeling that sensation before. He said he felt the power of one for all, and that what he saw resulted from his connection to it. He currently felt it starting to disappear. On the other side, we found Shigaraki surprised by Star's image appearing before him again, even though he eliminated her. He recalled her last words that as long as humans existed, someone would inherit the heroic spirit and stand against him because that was the way of life. Midoriya, whom Shigaraki's last attack sent flying and literally wiped the floor with, asked Kudo what he meant by giving up one for all. Kudo replied, telling him to stay calm so Shigaraki would not notice. He explained that the black mass he saw inside Shigaraki was the anger, hatred, and painful memories that were locked inside him. All those things gathered together and became his mind and driving force. But the user of Danger Sense found a crack in the heart of that mass. Mostly, that crack resulted from his battle with Star. That was not important now. What was important was that it was a wound even. His regeneration could not heal, meaning it was a psychological wound, not physical. Midoriya said, "Oh, that is nice. What does that have to do with one for all?" Kudo answered that Shigaraki's power increased significantly when he controlled all for one's consciousness. In their current state, he was impossible to defeat. Therefore, they would attack him from the inside by embedding one for all into that crack and attacking his soul complete. The smoke user interrupted him saying, "Wait a second. If we let him take one for all, he will simply use it like danger sense." Kudo replied that the situation was different. He told Midoriya it would be exactly like when Bakugo helped him. Only then did Midoriya understand his meaning. Kudo continued that depending on the transfer method, the person could be hurt or the transferred power itself destroyed. That was what they would do with one for all. But since there was no guarantee of success, he would try it himself first. As long as Shigaraki only stole Danger Sense, there was surely a way to transfer abilities partially because they were factors of distinct abilities and an integral part of one for all. If Midoriya succeeded in transferring Kudo with enough force, he could attack Shigaraki from the inside without him controlling it. The smoke user objected because Kudo's power was important and asked to go first since his power was currently useless. Kudo replied that gear shift ended. If he separated from Midoriya, the effect of using his power would disappear with him. If Shigaraki could use gear shift, he would lose his strength. Here, Bruce told him, "I always listen to you, but this time it is very risky." Kudo answered they lived in harsh times and had to make tough decisions. Nothing was harsher than their current situation. But despite all that, Midoriya still refused refused to give up. That was why he wanted to trust his decision was right, because despite all the power Midoriya obtained, he considered One for All a precious treasure from his idol and favorite hero. At that moment, Shigaraki asked them, "What are you whispering about?" Kudo asked Yoichi to take care of Midoriya. He asked Midoriya what he would do. Midoriya stood up with difficulty, telling him insistently he was ready. Anyway, we saw Midoriya binding all his muscles with Black Whip to increase his strength and be able to move, but he felt severe pain in his body and lost control for a moment. However, he moved himself, using the whips like Spider-Man. This surprised the Black Whip user himself, who never imagined his quirk could be used that way. Kudo said that was something new because Midoriya was not fighting because he was a hero whose duty was to protect people. But the reason he continued fighting was his love and passion for different quirks. That was what made One for All stronger than before. Aside from the One for All vestiges discussions, we found Midoriya thinking how to act, especially since he had to deal with Shigaraki's speed without gear shift. To transfer Kudo's quirk, there was no solution but to gamble and risk himself, because the condition for transferring One for All was transferring a part of DNA to the target person by the user's will. However, it could be transferred without the recipient's consent. Kudo said he and Bruce discovered the method of transferring One for All. Even after they died, they were still bound by their duty. At that time, Midoriya decided to use his blood to transfer Kudo to Shigaraki, but the problem was Shigaraki's regeneration ability, which healed any wound very quickly. Consequently, Midoriya's only chance was the split second before Shigaraki healed himself. Only then could he transfer his blood, along with Kudo's quirk, into Shigaraki's wound. Since his current state was not the best, and he was about to lose consciousness due to exhaustion and fatigue, his next attack had to succeed, or everything would fail. In those moments, Shigaraki regenerated his severed hand. He told himself Midoriya's last attack worried him, so he cut off his hand and discarded it. He suspected Midoriya was planning something. Due to the fatigue and pain from fighting, anyone else would have been thinking how to secure himself and recover his strength. But Midoriya did not do that and stood facing him, preparing to attack. He felt his danger increased more than before, but that did not matter because Shigaraki would continue attacking Midoriya until he was sure he finished him off, whatever it took. At that moment, both charged at each other, thinking only of defeating his opponent. Before the collision, Midoriya spread a smoke cloud in the air. The smoke user asked, in surprise, why he used smoke when Shigaraki could locate him with search. Of course, Shigaraki ignored the smoke and continued using decay on the ground, intending to destroy the whole place. Thus, whatever Midoriya's plan was, it would not be useful. However, he was surprised that Midoriya expected the move and lifted him and a large part of the ground using Black Whip. Thus, Shigaraki's first attack failed. We learned that Midoriya spread the Black Whips in the area when he was lying on the ground after Shigaraki's last attack on him. Shigaraki noticed Midoriya used the same counter strategy to his quirk as he did in the flying coffin. He used the search quirk and was surprised by someone approaching from behind quickly. He turned, grabbed him, and destroyed him with decay, but discovered he grabbed nothing more than Midoriya's cape. We learned the reason the search quirk responded to the cape was that it had Midoriya's blood on it. The surprise was when Shigaraki discovered the blood on the cape was not Midoriya's blood. He spun around, chasing the Black Whip covered in blood. However, he discovered the trick too late because Midoriya appeared from the smoke after retracting the Black Whip covered in his blood. Kudo's ability masked Midoriya's presence as he prepared to attack him with his secret weapon. Shigaraki tried to dodge Midoriya's attack, which he instinctively felt was dangerous, but that did not happen, and Midoriya succeeded in landing a powerful blow to his chest. It pierced all his defenses. With it, Kudo bid them farewell and launched on his final mission, attacking the crack, located in Shigaraki's heart. 1 second after Midoriya's attack on Shigaraki, they were both surprised by Dabi and Toga's vestiges appearing behind them. Todoroki and Spinner appeared at the sports festival. Midoriya asked himself what Spinner was doing at the sports festival since he was facing Todoroki. He wondered if he went crazy. Yoichi said Midoriya and Shigaraki's memories merged with each other. The smoke user called out to Midoriya, asking him not to stop and to continue his attack because Kudo's plan succeeded. He must not lose that chance, ever. Indeed, Midoriya pounced on Shigaraki. Different memories and scenes flashed before his eyes. Gradually, his memories and Shigaraki's intertwined. Yoichi guessed that One for All and All for One were affecting each other rapidly. The situation spun out of control once. Kudo transferred to Shigaraki, linking their memories. All for One had always tried to control the One for All heirs too, steal their power, but failed as their power gathered in the new heir. Finally, their time came to act since they were facing the most dangerous and powerful villain. In that brief moment, all the heirs gathered and prepared to take revenge on Shigaraki and attack him. With the flood of memories flashing before them, Midoriya attacked Shigaraki. The latter harnessed his power to defend and block the attack. However, Midoriya's attack destroyed all his defenses and hit him hard again. All the heirs launched a powerful attack on Shigaraki's heart, but he blocked their attack and rejected their transfer to him. Despite Shigaraki Shigaraki's success in rejecting the transfer of One for All, the effect of Midoriya's attack remained. Then, Midoriya wished he could transfer One for All through the hand Shigaraki grew, but it was just an outgrowth like hair, and not a core part of Shigaraki to transfer the power to him through it. At that moment, he saw Shigaraki's memories walking with All for One. As a child, he realized he was closer to his goal and his efforts were not in vain. He prepared to attack again until he succeeded. Opposite him, Shigaraki stood firm in his place. As time passed, he surrounded himself with hands until he looked like a ball. On the other side, we saw a flying camera broadcasting the entire fight to the world. Gentle assisted in landing the coffin safely. Immediately, Cementos went and secured it, making stairs so people could descend. The heroes exited the coffin one after another, moving the wounded for treatment. Back at the shelter in Shiketsu Academy, we saw people watching the broadcast that returned. Suddenly, everyone was shocked by the massive fingers before them. Without preamble, Eri ran to leave the place and go help Midoriya. But Ectoplasm stopped her, explaining Midoriya was hundreds of kilometers away and she would not be able to reach him. She told him if he was far, they could use the train that brought them there. He replied the battles with the villains were bigger than expected and most roads were destroyed, so they could not use that train. Besides, she did not store enough energy to use her quirk. If she went to Midoriya, she could not do anything for him, which she should know since she tried before. Eri fell silent with tears in her eyes, on the verge of exploding. Once Ectoplasm told her he knew how she felt, but there was nothing they could do except trust Midoriya. She sat crying uncontrollably, remembering Midoriya's encouragement, until she heard Koda's voice telling her Midoriya cried easily too, crying just like that. But as long as Midoriya exerted effort trying to change reality, he must do something too. At the same time, everyone in the shelter focused on the fight happening before them, especially those who knew Midoriya and dealt with him before. On the island, we found rescue operations underway and wounded heroes being moved for treatment. Momo helped Kaminari, who could not walk, as he watched Midoriya and Shigaraki's fight sadly. He asked Momo if situations like that didn't repeat often in stories where side characters like him and Kirishima said they were confident of victory. She replied she never read those stories before. He said it was not their topic, but currently, Midoriya was probably the strongest in the world. Despite that, he could not convince himself everything would be fine like it used to happen with All Might. He cried asking her if that meant he did not trust Midoriya. On the other side, we found Tsuyu sitting crying, watching the plane transporting Uraraka with the rest of the injured. Nearby, we saw Hawks and Tokoyami sitting on the ground next to each other. Hawks recalled Uraraka's words to Midoriya when he returned to the academy, saying if people cared a bit for each other, things would be better. On the other side, we found Nagant talking to a hero, telling him the reason for her trust in Midoriya was that he opened hearts, which was the thing villains hated most. He replied the easiest way to defeat villains was making them lose their will to fight. She continued that Midoriya was likely fighting now as just a kid dreaming of an ideal world. That was why he walked his thorn-filled path, exerting all his effort without hesitation. Seeing him struggle made a person cheer for him without thinking. We returned to the fight and saw Midoriya destroying Shigaraki's arms coming from everywhere. At that moment, Shigaraki, who was lost in the painful memories passing before him, tried to balance himself and pushed Midoriya away, but Midoriya destroyed all obstacles in his path. He reached Shigaraki and with one blow transferred all the vestiges who attacked his weaknesses and exposed his deepest secrets to the public, except Nana, who found herself alone discovering she was rejected. She asked herself if all that was because of Shigaraki's hatred for her. After thinking, she said it had nothing to do with hatred for her, but rather her weakness and fear due to the repetition of what happened with her son. Outside, Midoriya found everything around him disappeared. He moved to a new place, standing in front of Shigaraki's house. He remembered Shigaraki's words that the way to save him was destroying everything related to that house. He approached the door to ring the bell, but heard a voice asking what he would do knowing what happened. What would knowing the past change? He looked to find a version of himself, deducing it was his image from Shigaraki's perspective used to talk to him. He answered he did not know the answers to all those questions, but did not want it to end without knowing the truth. Shigaraki told him to die. Of course, Midoriya ignored him and entered the house. However, he was surprised by a car passing him at very high speed, which would have hit him had he not moved at the last moment. Nana appeared, explaining he was inside Shigaraki now and could interact with him because he was a one-for-all heir. She apologized because she was the only one who could not transfer. He knew he was happy she was still there with him at least. She continued that what was before them now was Shigaraki's core and his most sensitive part. He was currently in his weakest state, so he must communicate with him and learn that secret. However, he was surprised by Stain attacking him, saying that was why. Things went wrong. In a split second, Stain disappeared and Redestro's face appeared asking what he was doing there. Then Overhaul appeared, asking if he had a plan prepared. Midoriya pushed him out of his way, continued his path, and opened the house door. As soon as he opened the door, he found Nana's photo with her son in his face. Nana was moved, tears filling her eyes. Shigaraki's sister informed him that was their grandmother and said they would keep this secret and we will both be heroes. Immediately after, their father appeared, hitting Shigaraki, whose body was all black. We saw Midoriya inside Shigaraki's memory consciousness after sacrificing One for All to attack from the inside, since external attacks were futile. After some obstacles, Midoriya found Shigaraki's father yelling at him and slapping his face. After discovering he held his grandmother's photo, Midoriya tried to intervene somehow, but an invisible barrier stopped him. Shigaraki's father explained to his son that the woman in the photo was not his grandmother, but a demon who abandoned her son as a child. He said a hero was someone who hurt his family to sacrifice them to save total strangers. At that moment, Nana, who was struggling with guilt and regretting not being with her son when he needed her because of her fight with All for One, and her death in that fight could not hold back anymore. She cried blood instead of tears when she realized. Her son kept her photo not out of love, but to remember she abandoned him and not forget the pain he felt. She blamed herself for that weakness. Before the beating continued, Midoriya was surprised the barrier vanished. Nana finally succeeded in breaching Shigaraki's defenses. She stopped her son and apologized to Shigaraki for everything. That happened because of her. With Nana's disappearance, Midoriya found time changed. Behind him, he saw Shigaraki sitting, crying next to his dog. He said he could not take it anymore and hated everyone. Without warning, his decay quirk activated, and the dog was destroyed. At that moment, Shigaraki was shocked, unable to grasp what happened after the dog, his only friend, disappeared in seconds. His sister appeared, finding his hand covered in blood. She approached him in surprise, asking what happened. But seeing what remained of the dog, she ran away, terrified. Shigaraki tried to grab her to explain the situation. Of course, when he grabbed her at the right moment, Midoriya intervened and stopped Shigaraki before he killed his sister by mistake and destroyed the remaining part of his humanity. With his hand starting to decay, Midoriya told himself everything there was a memory. He had to stop Shigaraki, whatever the cost. Since he sacrificed One for All and became a normal person, he would not give up even if he sacrificed himself. Shigaraki asked him why he did that. Midoriya answered he did it because he saw him crying. Shigaraki replied he was wrong and that he chose to do that. He destroyed that house containing his family by his own will. Otherwise, what was the point of his power or even his reason for existence? Midoriya felt the sadness and anger inside Shigaraki and that he was on the verge of rejecting all his attempts to help. But despite all that, Shigaraki was still hesitant. Midoriya remembered Shigaraki's words, that if just one person extended a hand and helped him, his situation would have surely been different. At that moment, he knew the way to help Shigaraki without killing him, as Nana said before. Once Midoriya's hand was destroyed by decay, he told Shigaraki he felt relief when someone extended a helping hand. That was why he came to help him and do the same for him. He was sure everything would be fine. Shigaraki was moved by the sincerity of Midoriya's feelings and desire to help. He felt the hatred inside him disappearing. He shifted memories, playing with his friends, feeling happy, but suddenly he remembered. Those memories were not right. He told himself he was a villain using the hatred inside for destruction. With the appearance of his colleagues' vestiges from the League of Villains, he continued that even if his hatred disappeared and he became empty inside, he had to continue to be the hero the villains needed. Outside the memory world, we saw the hands Shigaraki form, disappearing to everyone's amazement. Sakochi asked where Midoriya was and what was happening. We returned again to Shigaraki, seeing his father returning from work with a colleague talking together. He was surprised because those memories were not his. Midoriya also was in the same state. A while later, he saw his father talking to someone asking about Shigaraki. He answered he was a bit naughty like kids his age. Then that person asked if his quirk appeared yet. We agreed that. The one talking to his father was All for One. Who else? This was irrelevant to the anime. We returned again. Suddenly, they found themselves transported in front of Shigaraki's house with all lights off. Before comprehending what happened, All for One appeared. He informed Shigaraki mockingly, asking how a fool like him allowed a trivial kid to affect him and weaken his will. He could not believe his foolishness, trying to pretend to be strong while being that weak. Did he think he had a single choice in anything he did so far, or what? He addressed Midoriya, telling him what he did to All for One's power, and his brother would not pass easily. Luckily, he could regain control due to Shigaraki's weak will. He was merely a backup copy of him, nothing more. Despite all the guidance and help he offered him, he was ultimately a weak child, unable to give up his life. Boring life. Of course, Shigaraki did not understand anything from All for One's words and asked him what he meant. He explained that he made him think all his decisions were of his own free will to make his will stronger, thus changing his concept of freedom. Especially after his successive confrontations with One for All heirs, he discovered that to win, he had to surpass their wills. While All Might was destroying all his plans one by one and cornering him, he was looking for someone who could weaken his will. He needed someone who hated himself and wanted to discard his identity, as that was was the strongest emotion and source of all desires. Thus, he had the perfect conditions to create the ideal villain who was a mass of hatred. At that moment, a new glimpse of memories flashed before Shigaraki. He saw the mysterious person telling his father that heroes these days could not be relied upon and one could not find them when needed. Shigaraki began to comprehend what happened while All for One continued his speech. He said his sister was too old to be used for his plan, so he manipulated matters. Without being detected, he stole the quirk he inherited from his parents before it manifested without anyone noticing. After that, he kept increasing his father's hatred and aggressive nature. And not just that, he controlled everything around him, making it go exactly as he wanted so that his personality would form, until the right moment came when he met Shigaraki posing as a friend of his father. Under the pretext of traffic, he held his hand and transferred to him one of the abilities Dr. Garaki was working on in the lab after creating a weaker version designed solely for destruction, meaning everything Shigaraki went through until now was designed and directed by All for One perfectly. At that moment, Shigaraki discovered he was just a pawn on a chessboard. All for One moved him as he pleased to destroy, once and destroy him whenever he wanted. All for One said he planned to destroy Shigaraki's consciousness as soon as he regained his strength, but things did not go as planned. Then All for One literally took control of Shigaraki's body and expelled Midoriya from his consciousness. Despite the damage Shigaraki suffered, his screams still tried to escape. Thus, All for One achieved his original goal to some extent, but the price was that the decay quirk and feelings of anger and hatred disappeared completely with the disappearance of Shigaraki. Meaning to achieve his goal, he lost the vessel that could last for years, in addition to losing his brother Yoichi, whom he tried to control all that time. Now, nothing remained but his final goal, which would be meaningless, dominating the entire world. At that time, Midoriya appeared from the dust, telling All for One he would not let him do as he pleased. But he was shocked to discover that both his arms were severed and he could not move. All for One said it was clear he was not the only one not in his best condition. However, Midoriya did not surrender. He pushed himself with determination and tried to stand despite his battered and destroyed body. All for One approached him, saying humans became stronger when they lost something important. It was natural for the end of someone with nothing to lose like him to be that way. He raised his hand to deliver the coup de grace to Midoriya and end his suffering. At that moment, All for One's entire focus was on Midoriya. Without warning, he was surprised by Sero appearing behind him and binding his hand. He freed himself. Then Sato appeared running, hitting him and pushing him away from Midoriya. We saw the surprise on Midoriya's face. Who did not expect his friends to appear at that time? Amidst all that joy, he found warp gates appearing behind him. He froze, and his heart stopped. However, he breathed a sigh of relief seeing Eraser emerge from the gate, apologizing for the delay. We paused there and went back 10 minutes to know what happened between Kurogiri and Eraser. Somewhere amidst the waves, we found Mike holding Kurogiri and beating him, asking where they were and why they came there. He told him to speak or even move. He asked what happened to him as he was, talking normally and saying he would protect Shigaraki. Tears fell as he said they should not have left their fate to the unknown and trusted the corpse leading them there. Eraser stopped him to cry. Mike told him not to cry, adding he did not mean him. He pointed to Kurogiri, whose face was drenched in tears. Mike told him it was the rain and that the one before them was just a Nomu with no feelings. The proof was he got rid of him so he would not hinder Shigaraki. Their priority now was activating his quirk and finding a way back to the battlefield. Once they did that, he would destroy the Nomu and himself. He asked him to forget what happened in the prison because miracles did not repeat. He fell to the ground, adding they were grown-ups and had to face reality and abandon their childish dream because they were no longer students. Eraser replied that when Kurogiri died, he was a student at the Hero Academy. If he wanted to kill them, he could have done so while transporting them by dropping them in the water. What happened in prison was that they saw a ray of light amidst the darkness, which was why he lost his ability to resist. But whatever. If they shine a light on darkness, they cannot erase it completely. Since they are teachers at the Hero Academy, it is their duty to ensure heroes graduate from it forever. He was sure their friend Yamada was still there in the heart of that darkness. At the end of his speech, he used his quirk, and indeed Yamada appeared. The command center was surprised by Eraser calling them. Tsukochi asked him where he disappeared to, or where he was now anyway. Eraser did not answer his question, but asked about Monoma's condition. He answered he was injured in the hospital now, and could not use his quirk. He asked him for the exact location of the battlefield, and the number of available heroes who could help in the fight and their locations. Within seconds, we saw Eraser arriving at the shelter in Shiketsu Academy, informing Ectoplasm that they managed to activate Kurogiri's quirk and needed all heroes who could help immediately. A number of unknown heroes volunteered and agreed to help him. One of those present took off his t-shirt and asked him to give it to Midoriya. On the other side, we saw one of the escapees from prison named Eijiro facing the heroes trying to free themselves from his quirk, which bound them like quicksand. Without any introduction, a warp gate appeared in the place, and the volunteers and the rest of the heroes arrived at the scene, led by Eraser, and the situation turned around. We finally reached the present, seeing warp gates spread everywhere on the battlefield. Eraser prepared to start the final phase of their plan to face the villains. All for One told them, "You came to offer me your quirks? How kind of you, really." At that time, Midoriya was lying on the ground trying to understand what happened from those in front of him, because Shigaraki was supposed to disappear from the one-for-all ability. Eraser ran to Midoriya, checked on him, and asked how much time passed since his hand was cut off. He answered he did not know because he was inside Shigaraki's consciousness. Okay, here Eraser remembered that when he was in the hideout and about to leave, Eri called him, gave him her horn, and explained to him, since they did not want her to risk herself, he must give that to Midoriya. Eraser was surprised by her action and asked how she broke her horn. He looked at Ectoplasm, who apologized and informed him she made her decision after serious thought. Eri continued her speech saying she learned many things from them and was sure she could use her quirk. Her horn would help them since it was part of her. Eraser objected, because that might negatively affect her ability. She replied she could not help or do anything during the fight of All Might, Bakugo, and All for One. Most importantly, she wanted to help the heroes who taught her how to enjoy life and wanted to celebrate with them after they won. At that time, Eraser used the horn, which healed Midoriya and restored his hand temporarily for 2 or 3 minutes at most. He told Midoriya he would not let him die before they celebrated with Eri. At that moment, Class A students appeared along with the rest of the heroes, all battered from fighting. Thus, we entered the final phase of the fight. Anyway, we saw Midoriya surprised by the arrival of heroes from everywhere, especially his friends, whom he was surprised gathered to fight. All of them showed signs of fatigue and exhaustion and could barely walk actually, but they would not miss the chance to finish the fight with Midoriya, whom they saw fighting, his heart out for a long time. On the other side, All for One was saying he saw nothing before him but gray lumps of meat, since he was inside Shigaraki's consciousness. He was supposed to be destroyed with him, but he heard a sound smashing the remaining part of Yoichi. Then, colors disappeared from his private world, and with them he lost his obsession. Nothing remained for him but a great void. That was what let him survive the attack. He said he discovered tragedy made people stronger. That ungrateful guy ruined the lives of half of Japan and killed the other half, basically, and talks about tragedy. Oh, damn you. He flew into the air, transformed his arms into something like tentacles, and prepared for battle. But against whom? Because facing the heroes was their strongest secret weapon, the power of friendship. Mostly that is the only thing that can finish him off, since all solutions ran out and he refused to die. Sero launched towards All for One, saying what motivated him was not wanting to fall behind his friends. At that moment, Todoroki and Endeavor appeared and attacked All for One at the same moment with fire fists. We learned that Endeavor was waiting to check on his family after the fight with Dubby, but since he could not do anything, his son asked him to go help elsewhere. Todoroki decided to join the fight too since his friends were still fighting. All for One stood, facing that army of injured heroes, saying he felt nothing from them because they were crumbs compared to All Might. He fired an energy beam towards them. However, one of the heroes used Black Hole to absorb the beam, and Orca used his sound waves to reduce the beam's power. But their attempts failed, and the beam caused a massive explosion. Literally, every attack from All for One needed a group of heroes to block it, meaning even with all those numbers, the fight was not even. Fair, basic. Midoriya tried to get up to help seeing their situation but fell. Eraser asked him not to rush and rest, because he was not fully healed, and the effects of his long fight with Shigaraki were still present. Midoriya informed him he lost one for all, essentially. Eraser was shocked by his words. Midoriya, he did not expect something like that. Midoriya continued that he lost one for all, along with the rest of the Vestige's quirks too. Although his period of using it was short, it was etched clearly into his quirkless body. Just like All Might, there was still a small ember inside him. As long as that ember existed, All for One would never stop. Midoriya finished his speech and walked, limping towards All for One. Eraser gave him ointment, bandaged him with gauze, and handed him the t-shirt he took from the shelter. Midoriya was moved when he learned those things were from the people he helped. At that moment, Aoyama arrived, holding Midoriya's hand and saying, "Let's go, because we need your strength just as you need ours." With the viewer's wishes and encouragement, Midoriya was able to use a part of One for All's power and ran. But one of All for One's tentacles attacked the place where they were. Aoyama pushed him and asked him to continue on his way. Then he asked Kurogiri to transport Midoriya, but was surprised he activated sleep mode. It seemed his power of friendship ran out. At that time, all the heroes were struggling facing All for One, whose attacks were futile against him. Eraser asked them to clear the way. Here, All for One informed them that using quirks was not about emotions, but controlling power and dominating it. Their numbers were useless. He fired a laser beam towards Midoriya. Before the beam wiped Midoriya off the face of the earth, Hagakure appeared then and reflected the beam. Immediately, Momo created a railgun and Kaminari charged it, firing at All for One. for one, but his defenses were stronger than their attacks. His retaliation was harsh, hitting a large number of heroes. Midoriya continued dashing amidst the attacks, raining down. He tried to block the attacks because he did not want his friends to get hurt anymore, but he was surprised they protected him, asking him to save his strength because he was more tired than them. Besides, he was the only one who could damage All for One. Then Tsuyu and Shoji appeared, carrying Midoriya and running with him at full speed. They said they could not outrun All for One's attacks, but at least they would get Midoriya closer to his target. They threw him with all their might. The moment Midoriya touched the ground, one of the tentacles attacked him, but Kirishima, Mina, and Sato blocked it. Mike and Jiro appeared, opening a path for Midoriya with a destructive sound attack. Midoriya continued, running while attacks rained on him from everywhere. Every time, one of the heroes blocked it in a certain way. At that moment, All for One wondered how heroes on the verge of death from exhaustion risked themselves like that. Above all, they showed no sign of surrender or despair. After thinking, he realized the reason for all that was Midoriya's weakness. Midoriya's weakness, which did not exist in All Might, whose power dazzled everyone. Meanwhile, Midoriya was weak compared to him, but that weakness was a strength making everyone want to help him. Therefore, those heroes would not stop as long as Midoriya continued on his path. He tried attacking Midoriya again, but could not. Feeling that, something was wrong. On the other side, we saw the leader of the pilots who helped All Might saying that since Star and Shigaraki's fight, he was ready to sacrifice himself. That was why he canceled the ejection feature from the plane, but All Might activated it. All Might replied that the students wanted a complete victory, so it was better to minimize their losses as much as possible. He told himself that since the day Midoriya risked himself without thinking to save Bakugo, he was to him the greatest hero in the world. Midoriya continued moving towards his goal. People's encouragement for him gave him strength and pushed him forward. With his last energy, Ida pushed Midoriya, telling him this situation resembled our first day at school, and only now did I understand what Uraraka meant. We saw Uraraka also encouraging Midoriya from the plane, conveying all cheers from around the world. Midoriya jumped in the air, gathering all his energy, and gave All for One a smash. The moment Midoriya's attack hit All for One said to himself, how did I not notice that regeneration was absent from my worn-out body? That was surely Midoriya's planning, or rather all the heroes' planning, because as individuals, they were very weak and had no weight or threat, but they gathered around him and attacked him. This made him focus on them and weakened his senses. Besides, Yoichi and the Vestiges' attack did not affect only the psychological side, but Shigaraki's body too. Here, Midoriya recalled All Might's words that if his body was not prepared to use One for All's power, his limbs might literally explode. He told All for One that, over the past years, his power surpassed All Might by a small margin. His attack contained the power of the 9 Vestiges combined, meaning his attack destroyed All for One and literally shattered his body. The abilities he activated began to disappear. The heroes rejoiced that their effort was not in vain. But of course, All for One had another opinion. He resisted his end, with extreme stubbornness, binding his destroyed body using various abilities. He said he would not give up and would not allow himself to lose now because he had not achieved anything yet. Most importantly, he would not allow anyone to steal what he owned. Only his dream would come true. He would not allow anyone else to inherit it because he was the only Demon King. All he had to do was repeat what he did with Shigaraki with any other fool. Since One for All disappeared, he could use Midoriya as a vessel, or even any other person. All he had to do was transfer his consciousness and control him completely. Midoriya interrupted him, attacked him, and told him that was enough, All for One. At that time, Kurogiri, who was silent the whole time, spoke and apologized to Eraser and Mick because he had to save Shigaraki. He teleported himself in front of All for One. Although Mike tried to catch him, he did not reach him. Kurogiri asked All for One to bring back Shigaraki because his friends were waiting for him. At that moment, Bakugo appeared like a bullet, pulled Midoriya with him, and pushed him forward. Mike wondered how that kid got there when he was in the hospital. We learned that Bakugo used the explosion quirk to fly all the way there. With Todoroki's help, he managed to arrive just in time. While falling, he asked Midoriya to finish his mission. Midoriya pounced on All for One, informing him he hated him and would not forgive him no matter what. Despite that, he understood and knew he was a monster, and incomprehensible due to the synchronization between their powers. All for One replied, asking him to shut up and not look at him. Midoriya continued his speech that he was not a demon king or anything, but just a lonely human. At that time, All for One recalled his memories with his brother, the only person close to him. He was surprised by a part of his brother's consciousness speaking to him, explaining that Midoriya controlled his power so that he could transfer him to him. All for One interrupted him, saying all that was unimportant. The most important thing was that he did not disappear. His brother replied that it was impossible because he was disappearing. All for One told him, "No, you are mine. You are not allowed to. Leave me no matter what." His brother apologized to him that he could not guide his brother to the right path. Their meeting was a final gift from Midoriya. At that moment, All for One said with despair he would not accept that because he loved him, and without him, he had no value. His brother interrupted him, saying that was how he exploited everyone everyone for his own benefit. Now was the time to pay the price because he was not the only one Midoriya transferred there. Then the rest of the vestiges appeared along with Shigaraki, attacking All for One at the same time Midoriya attacked him. With All for One's disappearance, Shigaraki appeared saying he thought he was completely finished with All for One controlling his body, but he survived thanks to Nana and Kurogiri's help. Although he regained his body from All for One's control, he could not destroy anything. The proof was Midoriya's hand. His words turned out to be true. In the end, Shigaraki was just a crying child asking for help. Midoriya replied he could not let him fade easily after everything. He did. That was why he fought to stop him. He wanted Shigaraki to stop himself and stop the spread of misery and sadness himself. Shigaraki asked him to deliver a message to Spinner if he was still alive, that he fought to the end. Ending his speech, All for One and Shigaraki disappeared, and the sun of victory rose over the heroes. Thus, the long battle between good and evil ended, my friends. Of course, everyone thought that with the victory of good, the matter was over. But there was still the issue of all the destruction that occurred. That was why we saw all the heroes participating in removing the rubble and rebuilding again. Specifically, 1 week after the end of the battle, heroes arrived from everywhere in the world to participate in the reconstruction process. Since most of Japan's heroes were in hospitals after the fight, the whole world watched. Thanks to those heroes' participation, reconstruction works that would have taken years progressed rapidly and would finish in a very short time. On the other side, we saw a doctor in the hospital informing Bakugo and his family that the surgery they performed on him was very difficult because his body was nearly destroyed, especially his arm, which they tried to restore to normal as much as they could. Despite all that, he did not know if he would be able to move his arm again with physical therapy or not. If he wanted to continue his life as a hero, he could use a prosthetic arm like Mirko did. Bakugo replied there was no need for that because his quirk relied on his palms primarily. Midoriya had no quirks at all, yet he did not surrender. Therefore, he was ready to do physical therapy right now and endure whatever the pain. The doctor interrupted him, saying that was impossible because he was supposed to rest completely, especially since his heart condition was more dangerous than his hand. If not for Edgeshot's intervention, resuscitation, and suturing of his heart at the right time, he would have been dead. He did not even know how he managed to move and fight in his condition. All he would tell him was that he was given a new life, so he must not risk himself in vain. On the other side, we found Midoriya and All Might in the same room. As soon as Midoriya woke up, he said he could not believe he was with All Might in the same room. All Might replied that was surely due to Tsukauchi. Besides, it was better so they could talk to each other. Anyway, there were not many empty places in the hospital, and it was easier for the guards. Midoriya asked how he was doing now. He answered that the doctor informed him it was the first time he connected all those wires inside one body. He asked him, "What is your status?" Midoriya replied he felt his arm a little. He confessed he regretted not being able to save Shigaraki in the end after he finally succeeded in destroying the hatred inside him. Then, All Might explained to him that he saw the most important thing was his feeling in his last moments. As long as he saw the small child inside him, he surely succeeded in saving his heart. At least, just as he succeeded in achieving the goal of One for All's inheritance after a long wait. Midoriya replied that true, he transferred One for All, but he still felt the remnants of its embers inside him. At that moment, Bakugo arrived at the place with his mother following him, scolding him for getting out of bed and apologizing for the disturbance. Bakugo interrupted them and asked Midoriya what he meant by what he said. Midoriya answered, he lost the One for All ability and became quirkless, but there was no problem because he was quirkless from the start and felt like he was living a very amazing dream. His words fell on Bakugo like a thunderbolt. He recalled his memories with Midoriya. He could not hold back and his tears drenched his face. To Midoriya's shock, Bakugo told him amidst his tears, "How could this happen? I thought we would stay competing and vying for who is better forever." Midoriya cried too and told him, "Enough, man. It is not like you to cry like that. Besides, I haven't lost all my power yet. All that is happening is that I am injured and cannot move." All Might informed them that both of them became much stronger than the first time he saw them. Since the time Midoriya threw himself without thinking to save Bakugo, he considered him the greatest hero in the world. But currently, he was an inspiration to everyone. For them too, he was a great hero. Bakugo, who saved him, gave him the chance to tell them those words. He was also a great hero. To him, he thanked them from the bottom of his heart. A while after that conversation, we saw the academy throwing a graduation party that was postponed for the third-year students. On the DJ was, of course, the respectable Mike, turning the place into a festival, not a graduation party at all. But it did not matter. As long as the kids were happy, it was worth it. Of course, Midoriya and his friends were shocked because they did not expect it to be like that. We learned that a large part of the reconstruction efforts was due to Principal Nezu, who had accounted for and prepared for that stage after the battle. He used his great influence to communicate with different countries and obtain support from them, whether financial or human. Amidst those festive atmospheres, Lemeon went up on stage, grabbed the mic, and started joking as usual. school. However, for the first time, he spoke seriously, saying the hero's battle was a battle to correct mistakes and restore conditions to their proper state. Thus, their fight was not over yet because the battle's effects were still present. Their mission was to help in treating the effects so life would return to normal. Although they would bid farewell to their school life, that was just the beginning of their lives as true heroes. After the graduation party, Midoriya and his classmates went to their classroom to find Eraser waiting for them. He informed them there was supposed to be another teacher teaching them that year, but as they saw, situations forced him to stay with them another year. Of course, they were all happy with that news. Bakugo said everything was fine then. Sero asked him what he was doing there as he was supposed to be in the hospital. He answered there was no problem as long as he did not exert himself. Also, he could not miss that opportunity, especially since the whole class was gathered. Sero was surprised that Bakugo was speaking reasonably for a change. Eraser shouted at them and silenced them. Then, Aoyama entered the class and informed them he decided to leave the academy. They were all moved by that news and tried to convince him to continue with them, especially since his role in the last battle was very significant. He replied that the teachers informed him he could continue in the academy normally, but he wanted to bear responsibility for his actions and leave the academy. Since he joined the academy because of All for One's threat, he decided to atone for his mistakes and be a hero. For real. There was no need to worry because he knew they supported him and he would be worthy of their trust. They could not hold back their tears from being overly moved until Aoyama did a final laser show for them to lighten the mood. He reassured them that true, he would leave them, but he would not leave his place empty. He introduced Shinso, who would take his place with them. The atmosphere turned 180 degrees. Everyone celebrated Shinso's arrival and forgot Aoyama, who attracted attention with the laser show saying, "Shouldn't you be busy preparing for the farewell party?" As usual, Eraser entered, returning the situation to calm again. Then the student council president appeared, informing them that second and third-year students would participate in reconstruction operations. In addition to helping in rebuilding operations, they would travel everywhere in the country to maintain order and counter crimes, especially since All Might's retirement and the last battle would surely result in chaos. They must counter anything that happened. At the end of the day, we found them leaving school, discussing what to do for the farewell party. Here Midoriya stopped suddenly. Todoroki asked him, "What is wrong, son? What is it?" He replied that it was nothing and asked him if he would be present at the farewell party or not. Todoroki answered he would be present as long as it was not today. After a while, Todoroki bade them farewell, took a taxi, and left. On the other side, we saw Todoroki's family gathered together. Their mother told his siblings there was no need for them to come. Endeavor replied there was no need for her presence either. Here Todoroki spoke, informing him his presence here was by his own will, not because it was imposed on him. Surely they thought like him too. Within seconds, they entered a room in the prison they were in. The guards informed them they had a few minutes because Dabi, whom they came to visit, was getting worse day by day. They all stood in front of Dabi's cell, whose body was completely destroyed. As soon as he opened his eyes, he asked them mockingly, "What is this? Why are you gathered here? Is it not a tourist attraction, by the way?" He could not finish his sentence and coughed, causing anxiety to appear clearly on his mother's face. Endeavor informed him they came to talk to him, telling him he would retire as a hero, and that he decided that before the battle. But as he could see, he could not even move alone. The hero Endeavor died, burned by Dabi's flames, who proved his fire was stronger than anyone else's. Dabi replied with the same mockery, offering his heartfelt condolences to the leader, adding, "But I wish you would. Stop that praising act, and don't try to be nice to me, because our relationship is over, you coward." Endeavor told him, "You are right, and you are the one who knows me best because you watched me all the time. All you wanted was for me to give you some attention, but I failed as a father and couldn't do something simple like that. No matter what people say, your flames were born from my quirk, and that is a fact that cannot be denied." He informed him that he watched his videos every day. From now on, he would visit him daily to talk to him. Although he knew he was late, he wanted to speak to him from his heart, especially since his siblings risked themselves to grant them that opportunity. He must not waste it. If he wanted to hate him, he had no objection and would accept all his feelings without trying to escape. His mother and sister explained to him that they wanted to get to know him better and make up for everything he missed. Once Dabi was moved, tears appeared in his eyes. Here the guards informed them that Dabi's heart rate exceeded the limit and they must end the meeting or he would be in danger. Todoroki apologized to them, saying he had one last question before they left. He asked Dabi what his favorite food was. Dabi did not answer because he was crying. The guards told them that was enough for today. Let him sleep and continue their talk another time. Before Todoroki left the place, he heard Dabi's voice answering him that his favorite food was soba noodles. He told him, "Me too." At that moment, Dabi remembered Todoroki's words when he said he would return things to normal and apologize to him. When they went out, Natsuo looked at his father and told him that was enough and he would not change his decision. That would be the last meeting between them. He informed him he would get married and not have a wedding, nor would he introduce introduce him his wife, cutting ties with him. Endeavor replied he understood his feelings and apologized to him. Natsuo hesitated for seconds and told Endeavor he thought he did his part and took his punishment for what he did to his family. Endeavor replied he would continue, reflecting on the mistakes he committed for the rest of his life. There was no need for him to stay with him because he would exert all his effort to protect them from any pain they might be exposed to, with or without reason, because from his point of view, that was the only reason for his survival and continuation until now. Natsuo replied that his path would be very difficult. Endeavor answered he knew because he decided to accept the punishment for his mistakes. Before Natsuo left, he called his brother and sister to drop them off on his way. Here, Todoroki reassured his father and mother he would be fine because his friends were with him supporting him, and he would continue striving to achieve his dream. As soon as Todoroki and his siblings left, Endeavor's assistants arrived to drive him. At the same time, Hawks sent him a message checking on him and letting him know he was there if he wanted to talk anytime. We started with the awaited meeting scene between La Brava and Gentle after they finally received a pardon for their crimes due to their help in the last battle. They were acting overly romantic. Anyway, we left them and went to Hawks, who met Nagant and was surprised she did not want to leave prison, even though she got released. She explained she was still afraid of the outside world and worried someone might exploit her again. Hawks replied he wished she would leave and help him, especially after Endeavor's retirement. She informed him she would leave when she knew society's reaction to Midoriya's words and actions and the impact that would occur. Anyway, she was sitting sleeping, eating, and drinking for free, meaning she was not in a hurry about that matter at all. On the other side, we saw the news displaying a press report about Shigaraki, asking people who Shigaraki was from their point of view. Of course, people's responses varied. Some said he was a criminal and a terrorist. Others said he was the leader of the League of Villains, sir, meaning he surely was not collecting donations for the poor. All talk was negative, of course, and did not need any explanation. In the same report, we saw Midoriya meeting Spinner, whom doctors saved from turning completely into a Nomu after taking quirks beyond his capacity. As soon as Spinner saw Midoriya, he asked him, "You came? What do you want from me? You killer?" As if he was selling prayer beads or something. Midoriya answered he could not deny. He was a killer since he finished off Shigaraki and All for One. Spinner asked him, "So you came to gloat over me while I'm in my worst state? Those aren't hero morals, Kudo, really." Midoriya replied he came to deliver Shigaraki's last words, which were that he fought to the end for his goals. Spinner was surprised and asked Midoriya why those words were for him only. Where are Dabi, Toga, and the rest of the gang? Midoriya assured him. Shigaraki asked him to tell him and only him. Then Spinner was moved and said Shigaraki was his hope. He was the one who made him see the world's situation could change, and he did not have to accept the persecution he was in. To him, Shigaraki was a great hero. At the same time, the report showed us the speaker's opinions, different opinions, and their criticism of Shigaraki's thinking and method. Meaning, briefly, like any talk show, they would sit, chatting without any clear solution or useful result. We returned to Spinner, who continued his crying session. He told Midoriya Shigaraki was the first friend he ever had. Midoriya said Shigaraki knew he was the hero of the League of Villains, and that was why he wanted to deliver that message. Midoriya got up to leave, but stopped when he heard Spinner telling him the heroes would continue their lives and fights, and with time passing, they would forget Shigaraki and the League of Villains. Therefore, he would write a book about Shigaraki, the symbol of fear, and the League of Villains, whose goal was destruction for the sake of destruction. He would not allow Shigaraki's biography and the League of Villains to be erased from history like that. Midoriya replied, "I hope it will be a comic book." He assured him he would not forget as long as he lived. Midoriya left the place. Spinner said to himself, believe it or not, he is right. Adding pictures makes the topic easier and much more effective. On the other side, we saw the mafia boss meeting Overhaul, who was imprisoned. He did not believe his eyes until he saw him in front of him. He informed him their organization was dissolved and no longer existed. Overhaul sat crying and apologized to him. The boss told him, "Didn't I tell you not to stray from the path of humanity so you wouldn't end up like this?" With Overhaul's crying increasing and his apologies, the boss informed him his apology came too late. Besides, he was supposed to apologize to Eri, not him. Although Eri would continue her life and forget Overhaul and what he did to her, he was not allowed to forget what he did to her. At the same moment, Midoriya was walking with All Might and Tsukauchi, who was informing him of that conversation. Midoriya asked what they could do so those incidents would not repeat. Tsukauchi answered there was nothing in their hands they could do. Here All Might intervened, suggesting they ask Hawks to include a larger number of heroes to prevent the recurrence of those incidents. Midoriya was amazed by All Might's words and asked him if Hawks could really do that. All Might replied he was joking and told him, "Let's go catch up with the new students at the academy, especially since it is their first day." Midoriya told him in surprise, "I don't understand what you mean, especially since different classes don't mix in the academy." We went to the academy and found Todoroki and Bakugo's fans chasing them everywhere hoping to get a word or even an autograph from them. Those two poor guys tried to escape with all their might after knowing how exhausting fame was, until they went to hide behind Ida, who made them all stand at attention. He informed them that no matter how much they admired them, it was no justification for their behavior. They must respect Todoroki and Bakugo's feelings. Most important, school rules forbade running in the hallway. In the background, we saw Shinso surprised because he thought Bakugo liked attracting attention. Sero replied his words were correct, but the fans were very numerous, and he was surely surprised. Midoriya told them Bakugo since childhood did not interact with girls much, so he got startled when a battalion of them ran after him. Of course, Mineta appeared here, exploding with anger because Bakugo had fans while he couldn't find anyone to give him the time of day. Then Bakugo yelled at the first-year students and shooed them away. One of them spoke to Midoriya, informing him he saw his fight and decided to become a hero because of him. In the staff room, we found Mike informing Eraser there were new requests to interview his class. He told him to reject them. Ectoplasm was surprised and asked why, as some people would be happy about it, like Mineta. Eraser replied there were others who did not want interviews, and he respected their wishes very much. After that, the whole class went to help at a construction site. They found Fat Gum, Best Genist, and Edgeshot there. The class divided into groups, each doing something. Some leveled the ground like Todoroki and Midoriya, and others collected iron and metals from the rubble. Amidst all this, Bakugo met Edgeshot, who asked him to rest and not tire himself. Bakugo asked him if he would remain in that form. Edgeshot reassured him he was recovering gradually and even had arms now. He asked if he would return to how he was before. Edgeshot answered he would not return to how he was before. He would be even better than before. The heroes continued their work, each doing what they could. After a while, the residents called them to rest and eat. The heroes were surprised by the amount of food, especially since conditions were not the best. One of the residents said their land was swept away in the last battle. Midoriya interrupted him immediately and apologized. The man explained he did not mean to blame him or anything, but when they saw the heroes exerting every effort in construction, they decided they must join and help them instead of sitting crying over spilt milk. At that moment, a bus appeared and first-year students got off. Eraser asked their teacher what brought them. He answered the students wanted to apologize for what they did, and he could not refuse their request. Then the students apologized to Midoriya and his friends for what they did and asked them to help as an apology. Their teacher told them okay, but most importantly not to hinder any of them and just do what was asked of them. The residents were surprised by the whole situation, not understanding anything, but it did not matter as long as they would help. Here, Midoriya noticed Uraraka was distracted. When Tsuyu asked her what was wrong, she answered with a smile that she was happy the situation started, taking a positive turn. She asked Midoriya what he would eat and went to eat, but Midoriya remained standing in his place, feeling something was not right. That was not Uraraka's nature nor her behavior. At night, Tsuyu gathered the whole class asking where Uraraka was and if they felt something different in her behavior or what. They answered she said she would go home for a bit, then she informed them she did not see her messages, nor replied to her. On the other side, we saw Uraraka standing looking at the city at night, saying the city view returned to normal. She recalled her words that the situation started improving gradually. She said since what happened, she felt things were not improving and a shadow covered everything. Although the fighting ended and they would not face anyone as evil as All for One again, and supposedly the hardest part was over and naturally she should return to normal and act optimistically and positively, she felt pain inside because she loved seeing her friends' smiles and did not want to spoil their mood. She had to suppress the pain inside her. Ending her speech, she recalled Toga's last moments and her farewell to her. She said she became a hero because she loved seeing people smile, but her wounds reminded her she was on the verge of death and was alive thanks to Toga's sacrifice. Regret and pain did not leave her, and she cried. However, she was surprised by Midoriya's voice calling her. She hid her face and asked him how he knew she was there. He answered he had a feeling he would find her there. Since that was her favorite place, he came as fast as possible. She replied that was not what she meant, asking what made him come there when she told him she would go home. He explained that if she had gone home, things would have been fine, but he decided to follow his intuition and indeed found her there. She told him she did not want anyone to see her like that. He interrupted her saying he did not mind seeing her because all the time from the first time. He met her at the entrance exam, and even at the sports festival, she always supported and helped him. No matter the circumstances, she thought of others before thinking of herself. That was why they considered her a great hero. Now the time came for him to extend his hand, help her, and alleviate the pain she felt. At that moment, Uraraka burst into tears, saying Toga died because of her. If she had not been injured, things would have been different. Her quirk allowed her to transfer her blood to people. If she had understood her faster or met her when they were children, she would have been with them now, helping people as a hero like them. Uraraka continued crying. When she calmed down a bit, Midoriya informed her he had the same thoughts and asked himself what he could have done to change things. Regarding Shigaraki, the conclusion he reached in the end was they must not repeat the mistakes of the past. All for One told him before that the path he walked was full of thorns, but if they continued, helping people despite all that, they would surely succeed in changing situations for the better in the end. At that moment, the class arrived at the place. Tsuyu ran to Uraraka, hugged her, and asked her why she did not talk to her and chose to suffer alone. Amidst all these conversations, Midoriya felt his power decreasing. Bakugo checked on him asking about his power, especially since he used it significantly recently. The whole class gathered around him asking him to clarify what Bakugo meant by those words. He told them the story. The next day, we saw Monoma happy the Academy honored him with a statue specifically for him. Then we went to Midoriya and his class having a farewell party attended by Eri. Midoriya said 1-4. All was completed. Thanks to the sacrifices and courage of its users over the past period. He wished he and his friends could continue their path with the same courage. We saw All Might eating with Hawks, who informed him he wanted to expand the circle of heroes and their popularity. But of course, that would be after reconstruction works were completed, because in the last attack, a large number of people who were not professional heroes played a big role and contributed to saving the situation. He wanted to highlight those models, in addition to professional heroes. All Might was surprised by his proposal, because he thought he would try to cancel the hero ranking based on popularity. Hawks explained his words were true if he looked only at the negatives, but he wanted to take the positives and increase them because heroes, no matter their power and influence, needed ordinary people. All Might liked the idea, saying that way they would help create a large number of heroic symbols. At the same time, we saw a tired child looking exhausted walking, stumbling among people living their lives normally. All this kid remembered was his memories and the suffering he lived since childhood. Because of his strange quirk, to the point the family elder feared his strange quirk and ordered them to get rid of him. One of them asked how, since he was an innocent child who did no wrong. He then ordered them to imprison him and prevent him from appearing completely. If the organization knew his quirk, their reputation would be ruined. Fate willed that this boy would gain his freedom due to the destruction that occurred. Once he went out, he found people behaving spontaneously and happily while he lived in hell. He asked himself what sin he committed to be tortured like that, to the point they sewed his mouth shut. Why was he the only one suffering fear and loneliness amidst all those people living happily? With those thoughts, his quirk began to go out of control unconsciously. With it, he attracted the attention of people around him until an old woman held his hand and asked him if he was okay. That same woman was the one who met Shigaraki after his house was destroyed, feared him, said heroes would help him, and left after. That same scene repeated before her. She said she still wondered if the heroes helped him as she said or not. We returned to the old woman who made up her mind, held the boy's hand, and reassured him everything would be fine and she would help him. The boy regained consciousness with tears filling his eyes, and his quirk calmed down. On the other side of the sidewalk, we found Midoriya and Uraraka watching the situation and ready to intervene. At that moment, Hawks told All Might that what Midoriya did facing, All for One reached everyone's hearts. He was confident society was improving and a time would come when heroes would have free time, unlike the current situation. Midoriya went back in time to the days when Bakugo beat him up every day when they were young. He said people were born different from each other, whether in appearance or quirks. That was what made people empathize with each other in an attempt to find something in common. At the same time, Kota opened the door, entered the staff room at the Hero Academy, and called Midoriya, who was sitting writing his journals. He asked him where to gather the class for the practical exam. Oh, I forgot to tell you we are currently in the future, and Midoriya became a teacher at the Hero Academy. Midoriya answered Kota and asked them to gather at the field. He continued writing, saying that was the truth he learned when he was 17 years old. The cheering voices he heard still gave him motivation. If the first step to becoming a hero was thinking of others, then everyone was a hero, because humans by nature formed connections with people like them and tried to connect with people different from them, living in harmony every day while looking forward to the future. We returned to the school days and saw the guys taking photos at the exam. Then they went out to train for the official license. Bakugo trained to get his arm back to normal while Midoriya and the guys cheered him on. He yelled at them as usual. At the same time, Spinner finished the book speaking about Shigaraki and the League of Villains. The book spread among people. Days passed, and we saw Midoriya walking, with Uraraka in the snow with only 3 months left until graduation. Midoriya asked her if she would change her job or not. She answered she would not change anything. He replied he was in the same situation. On graduation day, we found Mech rocking the DJ as usual. Midoriya went up to receive the graduation certificate from the principal, who told him without him, the world would not be in its current state. Midoriya replied that it was everyone's effort, not just his. Then the rest of the guys received their certificates. Then came the farewell speech from Ida, who went up on the podium with his hair parted on both sides and styled up. He said the world was surrounded by great evil, but they did not surrender and managed to overcome it too. Reach that wonderful graduation party. That was because of their cooperation, help, and encouragement for each other. future, to walk their path without losing hope. Even after graduating from the academy and embarking on their own journey in their world, they would always remember the meaning of being heroes. At the end of his speech, Bakugo exploded the place, and they left the place through an honorary corridor of teachers. At that time, Midoriya looked at All Might and smiled. He said he dreamt of being like All Might, and that unrealistic dream turned into reality one day. His story that began when his body moved without thinking to help another person would end with the end of the One for All Ember. If so, why was he still writing? Surely because the episode was not over yet. Anyway, 8 years after Midoriya's graduation and the guys in one of the schools, we saw a teacher asking students to submit their plans for the future. Some of them chose to be a hero because that was the most important department at the Hero Academy. His classmate replied that the support department was famous and its influence heard everywhere, especially with the genius Hatsume there. A third student interrupted them, stating he wanted to be a doctor to treat serious injuries. A female classmate said she wanted to join the programming department to be like La Brava. Finally, someone named Dai appeared, sitting writing quietly until the one sitting next to him asked what that was. He told him he better change his mind about becoming a hero because it would be hard for him with his abilities. Besides, with the decline in villain appearances and crime rates, the number of accepted heroes was limited. From now on, only strong heroes were accepted as pros. Dai left school thinking about his classmates' words. He said people changed. Back in the day, everyone thought about how to be like All Might, Endeavor, and others. Midoriya, Bakugo, and Todoroki. Although he knew he was the only one thinking childishly, he did not know what to do. His thoughts were interrupted when he stood before All Might's statue, which he visited whenever he was confused. We left Dai and went to a quick news segment. We learned Shoji became a peace ambassador working on improving the image of mutants. Uraraka, Tsuyu, Ida, and Momo visited schools, conducting awareness campaigns. Among those things, Uraraka provided quirk counseling because of what happened with Toga. At that time, Eri was living her life normally and had friends. On the other side, Eraser showed Midoriya a video of Bakugo, saying his friend was still the same. If he did not change his style, his popularity would drop. Of course, the video showed Bakugo yelling at people, asking them to move away from the fire because the situation was dangerous. Midoriya told him he knew he was trying his best to make him change his style, right? Eraser answered he unfortunately failed despite all his attempts. Thus, Todoroki's popularity would be higher than his. This was because he was the first to arrive if anything happened, whether day or night. Although his style was not the best, he treated all his fans equally. People stopped calling him Endeavor's son. Midoriya said Todoroki was amazing and soon he would surpass Mount Lady and his popularity might reach 1 million. Eraser noticed the enthusiasm and passion in Midoriya's words. He asked him if he wished to return to his youth days and participate like his friends. Midoriya answered he sometimes missed the past but realized that even if he lost his power and could not participate himself, if he could use his abilities to encourage someone, that would be the best solution. He asked his opinion of him as a teacher. Eraser replied that he was too lenient with students and must be stricter with them. Currently, most accepted students became heroes, if not all. He must be strict so they would not become arrogant and act haughtily. Midoriya told him, but you were very nice to us. Midoriya left school walking in the street. He saw an ad for Tokoyami. He said since they grew up and each went their own way, it became hard to coordinate their vacations and gather all together like before. He stood at All Might's statue. He continued that seeing his friends' achievements made him feel happy. Whenever he longed for past memories, he found himself before All Might's statue. At that moment, one of the children playing there fell. Midoriya moved instinctively and threw himself to catch him. From afar, we found Dai coming running too, but he fell before reaching the child whom Midoriya succeeded in catching. The child got up, thanked Midoriya, and continued playing. Midoriya extended his hand to Dai to help him up and checked on him. Dai was surprised the one before him was Midoriya in the flesh, in a scene reminding us of the meeting of Midoriya with All Might for the first time. Dai got up, wiped his face, and informed Midoriya he was a student at the Hero Academy. But the situation changed, and his ability was weaker than his classmates. Since he was confused about what to do, he came here to think. He asked Midoriya if he could be a hero like them. At that moment, Midoriya remembered all his words with All Might when he asked him the same question. He started analyzing Dai's quirk, excessive. At the end of all that talk, he told himself that after achieving his dream, his duty was to help others achieve their dreams too. He put his hand on Dai's shoulder and reassured him there was no need to worry because he tried to help the small child. That meant he could be a hero. All he had to do was exert his effort. Despite the nostalgia for hero days, Midoriya was convinced if he continued helping and encouraging people, he would make them become heroes. Thus, we reached the end. But wait a second, we are not finished yet. I am not the one telling you this. It was All Might who appeared out of nowhere to Midoriya. Midoriya told him, "You should have told me you were coming. I would have waited for you at the airport." All Might replied that was not important because he had a massive surprise for him. Midoriya asked excitedly, "What? Did you bring sweets or?" He interrupted him saying, "What sweets, you fool? This is cooler than sweets." He handed him the briefcase. He He had, and informed him the data gathered in their battle against All for One revealed amazing things. Just as quirks grew and evolved, technology evolved too. That was why they wanted him to gather more information. Midoriya replied he could not take something important like that. As soon as he held the briefcase, it transformed. All Might informed him it was the result of a research project with Hatsume's help and a friend of his in America. The funding came from his friends at the academy led by Bakugo because they knew he still longed for the past. At that moment, the briefcase transformed into a robotic arm. All Might finished his speech saying that was the power Midoriya deserved. Midoriya cried out of joy and emotion that his friends did not forget him. At that moment, Hawks informed them there was a collapse in the city and he needed their help immediately. Midoriya arrived at the scene finding the whole class waiting for him. They launched to finish their mission. Thus, my otaku friend, we have reached the end after a long journey where we experienced different moments and emotions. Finally, I hope you enjoyed that journey with us. Do not forget, my otaku friend, that your comment will matter a lot to me. I hope to know your opinion. Thank God we finished the saga of Midoriya, My Hero Academia, and UA High. So do not forget before you close to hit your like and leave your cool comment. And that is it. Goodbye.